theme of today's episode, which is universe of Vishnu, the 10 avatars of Vishnu.
You know, when you first say the word Vishnu, my head immediately goes into a very beautiful story that in Kailasa, Ganapati is having his birthday. There are 3 avatars, complete manifestations of Vishnu. One is Narasimha. He came because Prahalada was challenged. Somebody has an accident and you're worried about somebody's untimely death. Immediate worship to Narasimha can cure them.
Sadhana is something that I learned only through the course of the podcast.
One of the best ways to begin your sadhana is go to an energized place. You want to begin Krishna sadhana? Go and roll in the mud of Vrindavan.
Hanumanji.
Best place to experience Hanuman's energy? Go to a banana plantation. You'll access his energy like this. Why? Because animal head, human body. He'll appear like this. But in the south, you will see Varaha, Narasimha. Some of these are worshipped much more.
In India, I've only seen Varaha being prayed to in the Shakti community.
In the south, it's a well-known fact that we're struggling with real estate issues, land issues. Varaha Swami is your go-to devata.
The Chiranjeevi. Where do we even begin this topic?
Parshurama also connects to Dattatreya because Dattatreya is Parshurama's guru. So Dattatreya is a guru to countless people, Sripada Vallabha and many of them.
Sripada Vallabha Digambara. How is Vitthala different from Vishnu?
The Bhagavad Purana does not list Vitthala as one of them. There are other forms of Vishnu also which are not listed in them. One is Balaji. So there is an entire community that historically for years worshipped Balaji as Shiva before he was known as Vishnu.
You're the real deal, man. You're the real deal. We found a TRS All-Star, ladies and gentlemen. This is a special related to Vishnu Bhagavan, the god of sustenance according to Sanatan Dharma. Lots of us have heard about Dashavataras, the 10 avatars of Vishnu. Most of us know about Krishna and Ram Bhagavan deeply. Not many of us know about the avatars that came before Bhagavan Shri Ram. This particular episode will cover details about Vaishnavism using the Dashavatar storyline, but starting from avatar number 1, that's the Matsya avatar, and going up to avatar number 7, which is Parshurama Bhagavan. There's a lot that I learned through this conversation, and I'm hoping that you feel the same way once you get past this entire conversation. Mr. Vinay Varanasi, welcome to TRS.
Thank you.
I've been watching your content on Instagram. I think there's a lot of people who are explaining Sanatan Dharma in Hindi, in regional languages nowadays, while the world is also waking up to it once again.
Yep.
So while I want to begin this podcast with a hey bro, how are you? I also have to put forth the theme of today's episode, which is Vishnu.
Okay.
Specifically the universe of Vishnu, because beyond Krishna, Sri Ram and the 10 avatars of Vishnu, not too many people truly understand the essence of Vishnu.
Yeah.
So, where would you like to begin? Because there's a lot of international viewers listening into this one as well. I think the word Vishnu has reached some aspect of pop culture in America as well. They know that there is an Indian god called Vishnu.
Yeah.
It just says a lot about the popularity of the god.
Absolutely.
So, welcome to TRS, brother.
Thank you. I think that's a beautiful theme to take up. The idea and the fact that you said the world of Vishnu, because in some senses, he encapsulates so much of what playfulness divinity is about. So, you know, when you first say the word Vishnu, my head immediately goes into a very beautiful story that I'd heard long ago and I didn't make sense of it for a very long time. So this story is set in Kailasa, where Ganapati is having his birthday. And, his mother, being Annapurna, mother of the entire universe, she decides to have a massive feast. And she invites everybody. She also invites Vishnu and all of his family from Vaikuntha. So this is a very beautiful story that we find in the Puranas. And he doesn't go because he has some larger game up his sleeve. So he sends one of his attendants. And the attendant that he sends, he has this rule in which this attendant will not eat anything until he has seen Vishnu, until he has had darshan of Vishnu. So he comes to Kailasa and attends this massive feast that Annapurna has prepared. And at the end of it, they all have to eat because it's a celebration. And she says, everybody eat and then only leave, as we do khatardari for any mehman. And everyone except this person is ready. So it is Vishnu's attendant who says, no, we have this rule, this niyamam in Vaikuntham, that we don't eat until we see the Lord. My Lord is not here. I can't eat. So Annapurna smiles and she says, okay, then you do one thing. You tell the birthday boy, that is, tell Ganapati, and then go. At least, just inform him that you're leaving. He's taking rest inside. So this attendant goes inside, and when he opens the doors and he expects to see a sleeping baby Ganapati, in his place, he sees, on Adisesha, Vishnu is reclining. And when he sees this, he's completely perplexed. And this story is told in the context of how Vishnu is interchangeable with any other devata. Not just Vishnu. In fact, in some senses, that's the essence of Sanatana Dharma, that deities are manifestations of one reality that keep shifting shapes as per their wish and their will. But that brought out a very beautiful connection for me about how, so Vishnu is the same as Ganesha. Okay, is Vishnu the same as others then? That's a very interesting question which goes into a very fun rabbit hole, if you ask me. So, yeah.
Okay. Feeling like Alice in Wonderland jumping into the rabbit hole.
Oh, yeah. I'm glad. And I'll take you happily into the rabbit hole.
The Wonderland of Vishnu.
Yes.
Okay. When I was a kid, I saw B.R. Chopra's Mahabharata, obviously.
Yeah.
And after the Mahabharata got done in about 1997 or 98, they released a show called the Vishnu
Purana. Yeah. Yes, I still remember the actor and yeah.
That's the first time I realized exactly what Vishnu meant.
Yeah.
So I went back to that show when I was about 25, 26 with a slightly more heightened understanding of Sanatan Dharma. And I realized that show was very deep. The philosophy spoken
beautiful
in the first 3 episodes about how the universe came to be.
Yes.
Very deep, and maybe it's not for kids also in some aspects. You won't be able to understand it if you watch it as a kid. So I made it one of my life's goals to actually relay that kind of information in a digestible manner to people who've not seen the show and to people who are not familiar with the Vishnu Purana.
Beautiful.
Do you think that's a nice place to start this Universe of Vishnu podcast?
I think anything with Vishnu is fun because, like I said, he's such a playful deity that on one hand, there's so much of symbolism. And on the other hand, there's also so much of story, so much of relatable content. Because when we look at Vishnu, that the entry point typically is through Rama or Krishna because we're most familiar with them. In fact, in some senses, it's not even wrong to say that the backbone of the Bhakti movement in some senses is also Rama and Krishna.
What is the Bhakti movement?
The Bhakti movement is this rise in collective consciousness that happens across the country at a time when Bhakti was loosely understood as ritualistic practice. It's at a time like this that many people, and it's a movement that historically traveled across different states, but essentially what happened was that a lot of people realized that they were able to find divinity within, and that rituals were, set rituals prescribed, were working for some groups of people, but there were tons of people who were able to hold on to certain life values and access that divinity within. So it became a way of amassing people's thoughts, people's positivity essentially, and channeling them towards a larger purpose, saying, hey, you can also find the same Vishnu. And in the state of Maharashtra, the Bhakti movement took one of the most phenomenal turns.
What period of history are we roughly speaking about?
So this is, of course, the Bhakti movement spans multiple centuries. But in Maharashtra particularly, you see around 1600s onwards, a little before as well, the rise in terms of the growth of the Vitthala movement, which is a lot of people came together and realized Vitthala, a form of Vishnu, who became so dear to the folks of Maharashtra that they abandoned everything else for him. So essentially the group of people that saw Vitthala as their supreme lord, what they envisioned in this relationship with Vitthala was, he's the only deity we need. He's the only thing we need to depend on. And he's the only form of divinity that we need to forge a strong relationship with. So how do we do that? We do that by committing to him. What do we commit? We commit time. So we walk for days at a stretch from wherever we are, and we reach his home in Pandharpur. When a seemingly simple act like this comes into place, what you also see around it is the idea that, okay, no other hard and fast rules are required for this. You can come from any faith, any belief, anything. All you need to do is walk and sing songs of love for him. And you sing, and that devotion that comes from you, it happens without a break. So a break in Sanskrit is typically called as bhanga, something that disrupts your love. But this happens without a break, so it's called as abhanga. That also gives rise to a whole new forte of music, a whole new genre of music called as the abhanga sampradayam, where people just sing, and that practice continues in Maharashtra till date. Not just Maharashtra, it's spread now to other parts of the country, where people walk for days at a stretch to go see Vitthala, which corresponds to the English month of around July, August. In the month of Ashadi, on that Ekadashi, seeing Vitthala is considered to be life's ultimate purpose. And it really makes you think, what is so special in this deity that people don't walk for 1 or 2 days, they walk for months, weeks at a stretch with no basic facilities just to have one glimpse of their Vitthala. So that is a universe of Vishnu, if you ask me.
How is Vitthala different from Vishnu?
So Vishnu typically for us means Dashavataras. We look at 10 incarnations of Vishnu. But interestingly, the Bhagavad Puranam, which enlists more than 24 avatarams of Vishnu, does not list Vitthala as one of them. There are other forms of Vishnu also which are not listed in them. One is Balaji, for example. All of these deities have some amazing mysterious element to them that somewhere people are able to relate them to Vishnu. Since I brought up Balaji's name, I'll touch a little bit upon this. Again, undoubtedly India's most popular deity, because everybody associates Balaji and his temple in Tirupati with the riches. If you look at the temple, if you keep aside the riches and the Tirupati Laddu, which is possibly the most famous part of it, if you actually look at the idol of Balaji, it's not entirely suggestive that he's Vishnu. Because the idol has on his arms, he has 2 snake armlets, which is synonymous with Shiva. The idol has matted hair. Shiva is the one who has the jata jotam or the matted hair typically. So there is an entire community that historically for years worshipped Balaji as Shiva before he was known as Vishnu. There is another community that said, no, this is the mother goddess. This is Devi. Because the stone that Balaji is made of is called an Aruna Shila. Aruna is a shade of red. And Aruna is also a name of Devi. So there is a whole belief system that says, no, this is Shakti over here. And there is a yantra also that has been established by Shankaracharya. There's one version that says this. There is another group that said, no, in the southern part of the country, in the southern part of India, when you look, Balaji is on top of a hill. Tirupati is on top of a mountain, right? Tirumala is on top of the mountain. Most of the time, in Tamil Nadu especially, the god that is on top of mountains is always Muruga. Muruga is Kartikeya or Skanda, Shiva's son. So they said, no, this has to be Skanda. So there have been communities that all looked at this form of divinity in different ways, and nobody could decide who it was. In fact, when we look at the image of Balaji, the standard image, you see the Shankha and the Chakra, which are Vishnu's attributes. Those aren't part of the idol. Those were added much later. And so when this debate had to be resolved, Sri Ramanujacharya placed a host of different weapons in front of the idol at night, and he closed the doors. He said, let's see what the Lord picks up. So it said that the Lord picked up the Shankha and the Chakra, and henceforth it was established that he was Vishnu. But there are people who even worship Balaji till now as Dattatreya. They worship him as the Guru. So this is why I say Vishnu is mysterious. We don't know what history he comes with. Today we're looking at a very calendar print version of Vishnu and assuming it was always like this, but he's a very mysterious god.
Okay. Again, coming back to that Dashavatar conversation, the 10 avatars of Vishnu is what I have also known Vishnu as.
Yeah.
Primarily because of that show.
Yeah, Vishnu Puran. Yeah.
I also believe that deities have the ability to express themselves in art in a way that suits the children, teenagers and youth of that time.
Mm-hmm.
For example, I was a child in the 1990s. Very impressionable. Now that memory of that show stayed with me for life. And that's my definition of Vishnu.
Absolutely.
That when I was a kid, and I probably still do in so many ways, equate Vishnu with Parabrahm, which is the all-encompassing God.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And then for that all-encompassing omnipresent God to explain itself to the limited human brain, it depicted itself as a god called Vishnu.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Vishnu takes part in worldly affairs through his avatars.
Yes.
Okay. And they are parts of him.
Yeah.
It could be understood as encompassing everything that he stands for completely. But to the human eye, mind, ears, and senses, those avatars are only aspects of Vishnu.
Mm-hmm.
But they are the same as Vishnu also.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fair? Is there any teachings on the origins of Vishnu other than this particular story in the Vishnu Puran? Or do you think that the Vishnu Puran is also kind of man-made to a certain degree and we don't even know where the deity came from?
So, again, like you said, I can relate to this because I also saw Vishnu Puran as a child, and I don't know how much I grasped because, like you said, level was here. But what was amazing about it was there was a relatability. The relatability came from the avatars. It came from the fact that, okay, even if I'm not familiar with this concept of how from Vishnu the entire universe came into being, I'm familiar with Rama, I'm familiar with Krishna. So it becomes a very easy access point, which is exactly where the mystery begins. That we're all to some degree familiar with these two at least. But when you go into complete Vaishnava Siddhantam, that is, the philosophy and the essence of Vishnu, a lot of it rests on sadhana and experiences that you have within. Like you beautifully said, the idea that he expresses himself as he wills. That is the case for any deity, be it Vishnu, be it Shiva. But what is interesting about Vishnu is always equated with the idea of expansion. And expansion is the function, or it is the nature of the universe. The universe is constantly expanding. That is why Vishnu comes from the root word Vishwam, which means universe. So that life force which is constantly expanding, which is constantly spreading, Vyapakam, in Sanskritam Vyapakam means to spread. That spreading is called Vishnu because it is a function of consciousness. So that is the idea with which Vishnu is worshipped, that it is constantly moving consciousness. It is consciousness that is radiating from one central point, but from it everything begins. And that's represented in the form of Vishnu. Because you say from it everything begins. I'm saying it, but not disrespectfully. I'm just saying when you're looking at consciousness beyond gender, from this consciousness, everything begins, which is why when you look at the image of reclining Vishnu, you will see on his navel, there is a lotus. That's why he's called Padmanabha. From that lotus, Brahma sits and Brahma creates from there. So look at what an interesting depiction that is to showcase this as the navel. Because navel in Sanskritam is Nabhi. Nabhi means center. So it says this is the center of the universe. So the image of Vishnu is pointing at you and saying, hey, this is where the universe began, from consciousness.
Wow.
So it starts there and expands from there.
Loving this conversation. Now, I'm sorry, I'm going back to that show. Okay, because that's
not at all. You're bringing back my childhood also.
Yeah, it's the anchor point of my thought when it comes to Vishnu. So I remember the first episode is where they just show Vishnu arising out of somewhere. I can't remember exactly what he comes out of, but they just show that he appears.
Mm-hmm.
Then through him, and I think this is what's also mentioned in the Vishnu Puran, he gives rise to Shiva and Brahma.
Yes.
Right?
Which is what I mentioned, the Nabhi Kamalam, the lotus that comes from his navel, Brahma comes from there. Yes. Absolutely.
And then they show how Brahma is responsible for creating humanity, the universe, earth, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And then it switches into conversations between, I believe, Vishnu and Lakshmi, Brahma and Saraswati, Shiva and Parvati.
Yes.
And through these conversations, they explain the purpose of human life and the purpose of love and the purpose of rebirth.
You're taking
karma,
back to like 25 years ago, man. Yeah.
That's the origin point of my understanding of Vishnu. Would you like to add anything else to this origin point?
So I think this symbolism, I also don't exactly remember how the show began, but this symbolism that, okay, you see a reclining Vishnu, from him Brahma is there. So automatically you have two out of the trinity. And in all these different ideologies, when you look at Vishnu as Parabrahma, then Brahma and Shiva become, in some sense, subsidiary to this. If you look at Shiva as Parabrahma, you will see that there will be different manifestations there. There, Vishnu and Brahma will become subsidiaries to him. The basic highlight the focus is to highlight who is the Devata that is being spoken about. How do you relate them to Parabrahma? So in this case, Vishnu is essentially the universe that has life, that has the source of life, not life, but the source of life takes a form. That form, it's it appears to have color, but it's colorless. What I mean by this is, it's like the ocean. The ocean is not actually blue. The ocean is colorless. Anyone will tell you that. But it is appearing blue because of its depth. That is Vishnu. He's appearing blue because of the depth of his character, the depth of his being.
Wow.
That is Shyama Krishna, and that is the same thing with Kali, the depth of their being. So that's all of that idea packed into the color. I mean, that's how the rishis saw him, and that's what they passed on to us. So it really makes you think, my goodness, it's such a seemingly simple image of a deity that's reclining, but there's so much that comes from that. The universe comes from that, so to speak. So
why is Vishnu called the sustainer? They go creator, destroyer, sustainer.
Yeah, so this is a trinity conversation that comes in that helps us understand what are the different functions that divinity takes up. Essentially, Sanatan Dharma is saying that it is one divine aspect, or one divinity, which is splitting itself into three parts and then operating from there. If you look at the purpose of creation, not just the purpose, what does creation require? Creation fundamentally requires knowledge. For Brahma to create the entire universe, he needs to know how to do it. The idea of how he has to do it, that knowledge becomes his Shakti. Knowledge here becomes a goddess, which is Saraswati.
Wow.
So Brahma and Saraswati are a pair. Once this creation happens, what is created has to be sustained. Sustenance requires resource. It requires every kind of resource. That resource is Lakshmi. And therefore, Vishnu and Lakshmi are a pair. The next is dissolution. Dissolution requires raw energy to be able to pack up all of that. That raw energy is Shakti, and the third is Shiva. So the three pairs are communicating three aspects of what is happening within this. The role of sustenance is also connected, that Vishnu holds, is also connected to the Dashavataras. Because creation, of course, it's an ongoing process, but creation typically happens at the beginning, right? Sustenance is what human life is also about. That the longest time we're focusing on sustenance. Of course, one can say growth is also a part of that. That's a given. But the longest time, both in terms of our bodies and our souls, we're trying to sustain ourselves here. That sustenance happens in different ways. That sustenance is nourished by different forces. So Vishnu takes different avatars to sustain different parts of our being. So I know it may sound complicated, but it's actually very, very simple. It's just about the idea that to grow a plant, you need sunlight, you need water, you need good soil, you need to ensure that the air around is not too polluted. You need a host of different factors. All of those are the avatars of Vishnu for that sustenance of the plant. If you replace yourself with a plant in that case, you will see that, all of these avatars are helping me sustain. All of these are aspects of Vishnu that are taking care of me. So,
have you ever wondered while growing up why these great divine beings, while they are responsible for creating the entire universe, are interested in this one stupid little planet called Earth, which is in the middle of a sea of stars and, vast field of outer space?
So it's so interesting, no? All your questions somehow for me are now centered around Vishnu, because if you look even in the Trinity, the one who has the closest affinity to Earth is Vishnu. Vishnu marries the Earth. That is why Vishnu has one Shakti. Like we said, all resource is called as his Shakti, which is Lakshmi. Lakshmi splits herself into two forms. One is tangible resource. Tangible resource is everything that we can feel and see and touch and experience. That is essentially the earth all around us. So the earth in Sanskritam is Bhu. So Bhudevi becomes his wife. The other is intangible wealth. Wealth that we can feel but we cannot necessarily touch or access. That is Sri Devi. So these are both his wives. Vishnu's interest in the earth is purely out of love. It's like you said, it's a vast universe. Why this planet in particular? The same Vishnu Purana carried a story about how when the weight of adharmam becomes too much on the earth, she takes the form of a cow and she goes and appeals to him, saying, come and relieve me of the burden of, all of what's going wrong. And he says, I will come. I'll come and renew my pact because I promised to hold you and hold you with care. So I will come. And that's where the avatars begin. This is also mentioned in the Bhagavatam, but it's a very beautiful way to look at how it brings Vishnu closer. Because in some senses, we're talking about consciousness, we're talking about this fundamental life force that is beyond the reach of the universe. But this force is keeping this earth on its axis. That is Vishnu, that he's constantly holding it.
I have a tripped out thought/question.
Okay.
To the countless episodes we've done on Kal Bhairav and Shiva, I have realized that there are equivalents of the Kal Bhairav deity that we know in Hinduism in certain African cultures. Like in Egyptian culture, there's Anubis.
Yes, absolutely.
Which is exactly what Kal Bhairav stands for. And it's represented by a black dog, which is the same as Kal Bhairav in our culture. And we had an Africanist on the show who spoke about a female with a snake coiled around her neck with dreadlocks. A statue of a Devi, but which looked a lot like Shiva, found in West Africa somewhere. I think it was Nigeria, if I'm not mistaken. So the consensus thought that I gained from these thoughts is that seems like multiple cultures would pray to the same kind of energy, or at least a similar kind of energy. It makes me think that while on Earth we pray to Vishnu as the sustainer of the universe, could there be a planet far, far away where Vishnu is also worshipped?
That's an interesting thought.
We'll never know, right?
We'll never know. But that takes my mind to a story. And there's a very popular story about Yashoda and how Krishna is eating mud. So basically he's a little boy and he's just taken a handful of mud and put it into his mouth. And immediately his friends go and report to her saying, see, he's eaten mud. So she comes out to forcibly open his mouth and, catch him red-handed. And when she does, the story that most of us know is that she opens his mouth and she sees the universe in there. But it's so interesting what she actually sees there. You see different versions of the story. And one version catches my interest, which is this version that says she opens his mouth expecting to see mud. But what she ends up seeing is another galaxy. She sees endless galaxies to begin with, which is Akhilanda Koti Brahmanda, endless galaxies. Within that, her view, like a zoom in, it moves towards the Milky Way galaxy. Within the Milky Way galaxy, now she's able to see endless worlds, endless planets, Ananta Loka. Then when she focuses some more, she sees 14 lokas, Chaturdasha lokas are revealed to her. Then in the 14 lokas, she sees 3 planets, Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, Suvarloka. Then she sees Bhuloka, which is the earth. Within the earth, she sees Saptadvipa, the 7 continents. In the 7 continents, she sees Jambudvipa. Jambudvipa is the continent that we are in. In Jambudvipa, she sees Bharatavarsha. In Bharatavarsha, she sees Gokula. In Gokula, she sees another Yashoda looking into another Krishna's mouth, in whose mouth that Yashoda is seeing the universe, endless universes, 14. It repeats, the cycle repeats till she gets dizzy. And she takes a step back saying, the one who is deluding me in this planet into believing that I am the wife of Nanda, to him I bow down in namaskaram. So this is essentially Inception, right? We talk about dream within a dream. It's here. She's seeing universe within universe in which parallel universes are playing out for her. And in all of them, Krishna/Vishnu is showing her his cosmic form. So it really makes you think how much is there beyond what we know about this deity.
For 27 years of my life, I was a Krishna Bhakt. Went to Krishna temples regularly, prayed to Krishna regularly. And for some reason, I don't know, Shiva just entered my life. And now at this stage of my life, I'm a little more inclined towards Shiva worship. But I've gotten the perception of the two deities kind of embedded in my head. And I feel Shiva is very ferocious yet simple. But Krishna gives you a lot, and also through tricks. That's what I feel. There's a little bit of I say this in a positive way, but like a trickster aspect. But the thing is, the more you study about Vishnu and the stories of the Vishnu Purana, you realize that trickster element comes from Vishnu as well. Right? All the stories are related to some sort of trickster energy in a nice way.
Yeah.
In terms of Leela.
Yeah,
trying to play games with you. Back to the show. The first story that was shown on the show was about Dhruva. Again, Dhruva Tara.
Yeah.
Are you familiar?
Yeah.
You want to just relay the story once?
Absolutely. So Dhruva is a young boy, prince, wanting one simple desire. He wants to sit on his father's lap. But he is the son of the younger queen, So he is not given that status. It is his stepbrother, that is the elder queen's son, who the father takes up. The king places him on his lap, and young Dhruva is very rejected. He feels extremely hurt by this, and he comes away, and his mother sees him like that, and she recognizes and notices what happened, and she tells him, you are vying to sit on your father's lap, but greater than your father there is somebody, you vie for his attention. So Dhruva says, who is that? And she says, it's Vishnu. He says, how can I find this Vishnu? She says, you go and sit alone in Ekantam, sit in solitude, you will find him. So Dhruva takes it up, this 5-year young boy takes it upon himself, and he goes off to the forest in search of Vishnu. There Narad Muni meets him. Narad Muni initiates him into Vishnu Aradhana, teaches him Vishnu Mantram, the Vasudeva Mantram, and eventually Dhruva does see and experience Vishnu. And it's a heartwarming story because Dhruva wanted recognition. Basically, when he wanted to sit on his father's lap, he wanted to be seen, he wanted to be validated. And Vishnu said, I will give you validation not from your father alone, but from the entire universe. You will be that one constant pole star that everyone will use as a reference. You will become the Dhruvatara, and then I will absorb you into me. This is also what the show brought out, but it's a beautiful story, very close to my heart. So yeah.
Why is it close to your heart?
Because it talks to me about how close Vishnu can be. That he came for a boy. Dhruva is not a Muni. He's not. When you look at many stories, you will see that people who yearn for the divine, they have a lot of. There are not only years of tapas that they do. There's also a level of. I don't mean disconnect in a negative way, but a level of unapproachability that I can't even imagine what that feels like. But as a child who is interested in all of this, when I read that, there was a boy who went to the forest, and I still remember, Amar Chitrakada was my source of reading most of these stories at that point, and I still remember the visuals. Like right now, I can see Dhruva goes to the forest and he makes a small little Vishnu with clay. I went and mimicked that at home because I said, okay, if I also make one Vishnu, then maybe he'll come. It makes Godhead accessible. And Vishnu particularly becomes accessible because the number of devotees who are not just humans, there are animal devotees of Vishnu. There are baby devotees, children devotees of Vishnu. Dhruva is one, Prahlada is another. All of them make you realize, oh wow, he's right here. You just have to knock and he'll open the door. So, yeah.
Speaking of children devotees, there's also that kid in Vrindavan who goes, Radhe Radhe.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Vrindavan ki lassi.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, coming back to the story. I remember them showing this Dhruvatara story right before they begin the Dashavataras part of the show. Yeah. And that's where the show really catches fire and then it moves ahead. And again, I don't know why that show isn't appreciated as much. The way they've shown it, there's genuinely divine energy that created those scripts and those visuals.
Absolutely.
But for people who are probably never going to see it and are more of a listening-oriented audience, can we do a quick fire recap on the Dashavataras?
Sure.
Before we move forward in understanding Vishnu.
Absolutely.
So generally speaking, you'll also have to give context on what an avatar is.
Sure.
On the Glanir Bhavati Bharata, that whole aspect, and go about this in a storytelling manner.
Okay. So avatar is again loosely translated as incarnation, but I feel a closer English word is manifestation. Essentially, as the protector of the cosmos, because he's the sustainer, Vishnu takes it upon himself saying, whenever there's an imbalance in this universe that I have created, I will personally step in and I will restore balance. And that happens in various ways. One is what we understand, the binaries, right? That typically there is, now it's translated as good versus bad. But Puranas take such subjects in much deeper lenses, which we'll get into in a few minutes. So one is, okay, when there are negative forces that are at rule and he comes to vanquish them. The second is, he comes if somebody calls him. For example, the story of Dhruva that we just spoke about. When he came for Dhruva, he didn't come to kill a Rakshasa. He didn't come because someone was terrorizing someone else. He came because a young boy said, I just want love. I want divine love. I want to be with you. So there are avatars of Vishnu where he has manifested just for the sake of his bhaktas. Just to be with them and to reinforce how important that relationship is to him also. In the context of such avatars, we see predominantly there are 10 different avatars. So hence it becomes Dashavataras. Now, each of these avatars has like a host of, each has its own story. And if we get into each, there'll be like 10 episodes that we can come out of. But it begins, the Dashavataras are, I have to give this disclaimer because most of us assume it's a linear progression, that we start with 1 and go to 10 and they come chronologically, but they don't. This sequencing is a later concept. It happens with a different purpose. The sequence in which we know the Dashavataras is, first there is Vishnu who comes as a fish, Matsya. And this is at the time that the universe is being flooded, much like Bombay right now. And in that context, he comes as Matsya, which is the fish. And he holds on to all the species, keeps them safe. He rescues Veda Vidya from a Rakshasa that has taken it away. Again, I'm not going into too many details. And he establishes and ensures that every creature is safe. And from there, life begins again. This is Matsya.
The key human character there, I think, is Manu.
Manu is the one who sees this little fish. And he takes this fish home. Because this fish says, I'm helpless. Please protect me. And then he puts it in a pot. And by the next day, the fish has grown. Then he transfers it to a larger pot. And the next day, it grows even more. Ultimately, he realizes this fish is huge. And when he releases it into the sea, the same fish that he protected protects him. So it's this idea of dharmo rakshati rakshitaha, that you follow, you do what you can, divinity will protect you.
Wow.
So that's Matsya. Then comes the next one, again, only in this sequence of Dashavataras.
Sorry, just one small
Not at
pause.
all.
Every ancient culture in the world has their own version of Noah's Ark.
I was just going to say, Matsya, you can draw so many parallels between Matsya Avataram and Noah's Ark for precisely this reason.
We've done a lot of ancient Earth history podcasts lately with Rupa Bhati, Nilesh
Lovely.
Oak, all these people. The Earth has gone through many ice ages, many warming phases. We're currently in one, but this one's also got the element of pollution, which makes it much more intense. But the Earth also goes through multiple meteor strikes and multiple cataclysmic floods. So a lot of people believe that this is a story of one of those cataclysmic floods.
Yeah. Beautiful.
I mean, that's been the reality of human beings and this planet for so long.
Yeah.
I don't know. My lens for viewing all these stories is always with a question mark. I always question that could this have actually happened? And I believe there's some truth behind these stories. We're just not able to wrap our head around exactly what. I feel like all this stuff actually happened, which is that all, hey, don't call it mythology versus hey, call it a history subject.
Right. Yeah.
I'm for that thought, but I just want to do a little more inquiry. That's why those podcasts with Rupa Bhati and Nilesh Oak just hit it out of the park. But back to the story.
No, that's an interesting point because, like you said, it definitely does make you think about, okay, so we're looking at flooding, right? Like you said. And the Sanskritam word for flooding is pralayam, where laya is dissolution. It's not destroying, it's dissolution. There are various kinds of dissolutions that are happening. There are dissolutions that are happening on a daily basis. From the time that you sleep and you get up, there is one dissolution that has happened already. In that transition period, something has to ensure that the same person who is sleeping has to get up. Someone has to ensure that there is sustenance between those two. That one that comes between any of those transitions is Vishnu. In that laya state, right? In that state of dissolution. So that's why you'll see water and flooding coming as a recurring theme across multiple cultures. Because they're talking about how it washes out life. And even during that washout, there is a reassurance saying, no, I've got your back, guys. Don't worry. So that comes across very beautifully through the idea of Matsya Avataram.
Okay.
Vishnu, interestingly, is the ruling deity of water.
Really?
Yeah. So just like how Shiva or Rudra is considered to be the ruling deity of Agni, everything about fire is Rudra. Everything about water is Vishnu. But Vishnu's connection with water is so evident in the fact that he's reclining on a bed, a serpent bed, which is in the water. Right? So Vishnu he's like potential energy. He's hidden within something, in that state of laya, in that state of dissolved thing. We'll get to it in some time. So to finish your Dashavataras before I forget about that. So the next one that you see in the sequence is Kurma, the tortoise. So here the Devatas and the Rakshasas have come together to churn the ocean. And as their churning rod, which is this massive mountain called Mandara, is slipping, Vishnu comes and he becomes the base for that. So Kurma upholds the entire mountain and then the churning goes on. And through the churning, they receive Amritam or nectar. And that elixir that they receive, again, Vishnu comes to give them. So when we tell the story of Dashavataras, it's very interesting. We quickly tell them. But most often, within one avatara, multiple avatars will come. So for example, the second avatar that we talk about is Kurma Avataram. Vishnu as the tortoise. But at the end of Kurma Avataram, it's Vishnu who comes as Dhanvantri and gives everybody the Amritam that was hidden inside the Samudram. So that's another avataram of Vishnu that altogether manifests there. But when we tell it sequentially, it doesn't really come out over here.
Dhanvantri is a deity who's considered the healing deity, if I'm
Absolutely.
not mistaken, right?
Yes.
You pray to it if you want quick healing.
Any kind of healing. So again, within Vaishnavism, when you view Vishnu as Parabrahma or the Supreme, if your health is not okay, he will take the form of Dhanvantri. If you view Shiva as your Ishtadevata or as the Supreme, then Shiva has a form called Vaidyeshwara. Vaidya is again doctor. So Shiva becomes the healer. So any Devata that you worship will take a form of a doctor or a healer to come and heal you. So in Vaishnavism or in Vaishnavism parlance, that would be Dhanvantri.
Is there a Devi version of this?
Oh yes, there are multiple. There is Amrita Swarupini, the one who is the form of elixir or nectar herself. But there are different names for different devatas. Dhanvantri is also the deity that is the center point for the entire Ayurveda culture. Ayurveda is all originated from Dhanvantri. That's why when you go to any Ayurvedic center, you will see an image of Dhanvantri there. And in Kerala, where Ayurveda blossomed, that's where Dhanvantri's worship is also seen. And it's so beautiful, no? They named him Dhanvantri. Again, when we say they named him, nobody gave him a name. He came with a name. But Dhan, that we typically translate as wealth, literally health is wealth. And he's like he's a constant reminder of that. So in fact, the festival that we celebrate as Dhanteras is the day that Dhanvantri came from the ocean of milk. So it is Dhanatrayodashi because he came, not because it's about buying. That's a capitalistic society turn on this whole thing. But it's actually a day that you're supposed to celebrate and worship the source of health within the body. So,
Damn, dude.
Yeah. So one thing leads you into another, like I said. Connections.
Isn't there Mohini avatar also?
See, in the same story. Yes, absolutely.
She came to distract the Rakshasas.
Yes. Right? Another function of Vishnu. When the universe is created, a function of this universe, as much as it is to nourish and from a very philosophical lens, it is also to take every being towards their spiritual awareness, to make all of us realize that we are divine. There is also some level of delusion that's required, some level of delulu that we all need to be in. Because if there's no delusion, nothing is going to function. If that were the case, we wouldn't even be having this conversation. We'd just be saying, no, you are Atma, I am Atma. We are both, our Atmas are connecting. Why are we talking? So delusion is a very necessary force. Delusion in Sanskritam is called moham. The embodiment of moham is mohini. The right amount of delusion. Somebody who I follow very keenly, he always gives this beautiful example saying delusion should be like a necktie. If it's too tight, you won't have a neck. If it's too loose, you won't have a tie. So delusion in too much quantity will make you completely forget that we are all essentially spiritual. But the absence of delusion will not let you function in this world. So Vishnu was also responsible for delusion. And that's when Mohini comes in, that she deludes everybody by her beauty. And then the Rakshasas go towards her and things like that. And ultimately, she distributes the Amritam that Dhanvantri brought. She distributes that only to the Devatas. But Mohini comes in multiple times, multiple portions, multiple stories.
Really?
As a reminder that God can delude you. Your intellect that you counted on, in 1 second it can go. In that moment, if that delusive force takes over. That is, in Vaishnavism, it is Mohini. In Shaktam, it is Maya. It's the same thing. Vishnu and Vaishnavi, Vishnu and Shakti, identical. Which is why you will see that Vishnu has a sister. His sister is Shakti. One of the names given to Devi is Padmanabha Sahodari. Sahodara in Sanskritam, Sahodara means sibling. Sahodari also, of course, means sibling. It's the same, just a change of gender. But it means they came from the same space. Saha Udaram. They came from the same space.
When you say Devi, you're talking about the divine feminine.
The divine feminine.
Okay.
So that takes me into another story tangent, okay, which will help explain this better. When you look at Vishnu, he's all about energy and expanse, like I mentioned, right? Devi is the same. So there is this moment, there is an elaborate story about Shiva and his wife Sati. This is when Devi first manifests. And I think you've spoken about it on other shows as well, right? Other episodes, where Sati's father decides to have this massive yajna in order to basically humiliate Shiva. And Sati wants to go for it. So she goes there and she realizes this whole thing was done with the intent of insulting Shiva, and she lets go of her body. When she does that, Shiva sends some of his ganas to destroy the yajna because he recognizes Daksha, his father-in-law, Sati's father, did it purely with the intention, with a negative intention. So he says, let this entire yajna be destroyed. So he goes about doing that. Now, here's the interesting, this is where Puranas will make you think out of black and white. You would think, okay, Shiva has said this, so Vishnu is going to be on that side. But Vishnu was asked to protect this yajna. When Daksha had it planned, he went to Vishnu and he said, will you protect my yajna? Vishnu said, up to a point, I will. So he gave the terms and conditions apply, which Daksha didn't read. So now, in this conflict, you will see Shiva has sent all his ganas, all his forces to go and destroy the yajna. Vishnu has to protect it. So they're against each other in this moment, as per the story. And what happens then? Veerabhadra, who is one of Shiva's most trusted attendants, he comes face to face with Vishnu and they're engaged in a very serious duel. For us, this is inconceivable. How can somebody fight with the sustainer of the universe? But this is coming from Shiva. This Veerabhadra is coming from Shiva with that rage of his swami. So he comes and locks horns with Vishnu, and when he's doing that, there's a moment when he's about to kill Vishnu. And at that point, he hears a voice above that says, don't strike. And there's a female voice and he immediately recognizes it. This is the voice of Sati who has left her body. So he recognizes saying, this is Swami's wife. This is my ruling deity in Kailasa. And she says, don't strike. The one that you're about to strike, that is me in masculine form. And that is your opening point. Oh, so they are the same thing. So Vishnu and Shakti are essentially the same thing. And you see the number of festivals that they have together. All of Shakti's festivals correspond with Vishnu's festivals. The two main Navaratris that we have in the year, both end with Vishnu's festivals. The first one is the Vasanta Navaratri, which ends with Ram Navami. The second is the Sharad Navaratri, which ends with Vijayadashmi. Both are Rama's festivals. They're essentially saying that these are the same things. Rama and Parvati have the same birthday. Both of them are born the exact same tithi. Just one star apart. Saying that when it's masculine, it's Vishnu. When it's feminine, it's Vaishnavi. That's all the differences. So it really, Vishnu will open you into another world altogether. So yeah.
What happens at the end of the second avatar story?
So Mohini comes. So essentially Amritam, which was what all the Devatas were and the Rakshasas were pining for, Dhanvantri brings this. And he distributes, he doesn't distribute, the Rakshasas take it and they run. That's when Mohini comes and they're all seduced. And they're so smitten by Mohini that they forget and they don't even realize that she's not distributing it to them. So she distributes it to the Devatas. One Rakshasa notices and he quickly changes his costume and goes and sits on the other side. And Mohini recognizes this. Surya and Chandra immediately alert Mohini that, hey, that guy's come from the other side. So Mohini, in 1 second, converts herself to Vishnu and Vishnu cuts this Rakshasa's head. Head gets separated, body gets separated. That becomes Rahu and Ketu. And they take out their anger on Surya and Chandra, which is what becomes an eclipse periodically. That's the logic given to, or the story that's given to the concept of an eclipse. So that's how this story largely ends.
The origins of astrology.
Yeah, exactly. Vishnu and astrology is a whole subject in itself.
Why?
Because
I just said that as a poetic line, but
oh my goodness. Vishnu is the ruling deity of the feet. In the human body, Vishnu governs the feet. Because again, link it to Vishnu's essence. Vishnu is about movement. Movement for us happens through the feet. Locomotion. The star that connects to movement is Shravana Nakshatram. So those who are in serious Vishnu Upasana will always use Shravana as a Nakshatram to go closer to him. Because when Shravana is in the sky, Vishnu is the ruling deity for that star. Vishnu's placement in the horoscope determines a whole lot of other things. So there are ways to connect with Vishnu and use that connection to go beyond what's happening in the horoscope chart also. Vishnu is extraordinary like that.
As in you can bend your destiny if you pray to Vishnu correctly.
Absolutely. In that sense, you can bend it with any devata. When your sadhana is so intense, essentially what is your Jatakam is nothing but an indication of what is likely to happen to you. Your horoscope is saying that these are the junctions that you will be at. And you are at these junctions based on your own past karma. But if your sadhana is strong, you can tide over that. But again, the X factor here is you don't know how much of karma is in store. You don't know what you've done in the past. We don't have that memory. Only the divine has it. But you have the ability to go beyond that if your sadhana is rooted enough. So again, there are many, many stories about Vishnu that communicate that. But any devata this would apply to. That you focus on them strong enough, all of this will disappear. Because Vishnu is in charge of the grahas also. So sustenance, again, entirely his department. So he takes care of that. So third avatar. Third avatar is Vishnu as a boar, a wild boar. The third avatar is actually, which is called as Varaha Swami. And here, this avatar technically happens at the beginning of creation. Although we give it the third place. It happens at the beginning of creation because Brahma has created the entire universe. And he tells the Prajapatis, who he has created from his mind, he says, go and, establish dharma, establish knowledge, populate the world. And they say, where is the world? And then he says, oh my God, I just placed her on her axis. Where did she go? And then the devatas tell him, no, I think there's this Rakshasa that has just taken her away and he's going to drown her. So Brahma is wondering what to do. And from his nose, this size, a small beam of light escapes and it grows in size, becomes a wild boar, dives into the ocean, kills the Rakshasa, picks her up on her tusks, the earth. Another reason why Vishnu is closely connected to the earth. As he picks her up with her tusks, he impregnates her with all forms of plants and they all come from within her. And then he holds her up saying, I will always hold you up. So that is a very beautiful image that you will see across Hoysala architecture in southern parts of the country. You'll see a detailed form of Varaha. On top of his tusks, he has Bhudevi. That shows how he's always watching over the earth. Because that's his love for her. And anyone who violates the earth in any way, through any kind of pollution, essentially he's saying, buddy, I'm watching. So this is Varaha, which we place as the third avatar.
But perhaps chronologically, it may have been the first one.
Yeah, definitely. Because it came at Srishti Adi. It came at the beginning. This is the first avataram that came at the time of creation. Before that, he is there as Narayana reclining. But the first time that Narayana took this form was here.
In India, I've only seen Varaha being prayed to in the Shakti community.
No, in the south. So the thing with different worship systems is they flourished and grew in different parts of the country. So for example, Ganapati's worship began and was centered in Maharashtra. From here, it passed on to Karnataka and then to the rest of the country.
Really?
Yeah, that is why you want to understand Ganapati, you have to come to Maharashtra. You have to see the Ashtavinayaks. You have to understand why is Ganapati in everybody's blood here? What is so special about Ganapati? You want to understand Kartikeya, you have to go to Tamil Nadu. Because that's where Muruga worship blossomed. The Tamil literature on him, the amount of the rituals, the focus that he gets there. You look at Surya, you have to go to Gujarat. Gujarat, which we call as Saurashtra, sometimes translated as Saurashtra, meaning 100 different things, also owes its origins to Saura. Saura means from Surya. Saura Rashtra. Surya worship is concentrated there. But the thing about Vishnu, Shiva and Shakti is they spread across the country in different ways. So in the north, it became more centered around Rama and Krishna. But in the south, you will see Varaha, Narasimha. Some of these are worshipped much more. Not only by one community, multiple communities. In fact, in the south, it's a well-known fact that if you're struggling with real estate issues, land issues, Varaha Swami is your go-to devata.
Really?
Because he picked up the earth, no? So everything about the land is his. And Varaha as an animal, so this is where the symbolism begins. This animal is essentially, in nature, when you look at it, it's roaming around in slush or in the mud, right? In mud, that's a combination, slushy mud. Combination of two elements out of the 5, out of the Panchabhutas, earth and water are mixed up in that slush. Varaha's story, he goes into the water and picks up the earth. So 2 elements. So these 2 elements get balanced in your body and in your horoscope if you worship Varaha Swami. So that's the connection there.
Have you ever worshipped Varaha Swami?
Oh yes,
Really?
yes. And I've seen what Varaha does to strengthen sadhana. Because Varaha belongs to this category of devatas where if you worship him, he appears like this. Again, appears doesn't necessarily mean he physically appears. It means that he stands by your side. And I've seen that at moments so I train for marathons. And I have seen at moments when I have almost slipped into ditches in front of me after running. The longest I think that I ran at that time when I was first training was something like 26. And I had done it without too much of prep for my body. So I saw that I was getting a little delirious in the run. And I could see that there was a ditch there. And I could see that I'm slipping, my foot was still going towards it. And in 1 second, I just thought, Varaha, hold. Just hold. And as if something pushed me back, I fell back towards a tree. If it wasn't for that, it wouldn't have happened. So Varaha is a force that appears immediately. Again, a beautiful aspect of certain devatas that have a combination of animal heads and human bodies. They appear like this. Varaha is one. The next avataram, Narasimha, is complete testimony to this. Because Narasimha is an incarnation that comes when there is a Rakshasa, Hiranyakashipu. For him, Vishnu means he's sitting with Shankachakra and Vaikuntha. And he has a son. And this son of his, Prahlada, for Prahlada, Vishnu is consciousness. Vishnu is love. Vishnu is everything in the universe. His father cannot wrap his head around this. He constrains Vishnu to a form. And his son is saying Vishnu is pure love. So there's a tussle. There's a tussle between, this is one of the most beautiful avatara stories. Because there's a tussle between atheism and theism. There's a struggle the father is having to see beyond duality. For him, Vishnu is only a form. But here his boy is saying Vishnu is strength, Vishnu is weakness, Vishnu is love, Vishnu is everything in this universe. He cannot wrap his head around that. So finally challenges his son. After trying to kill him, trying to dispose of the kid, he says, this Vishnu that you speak of, is he in the pillar? He says, I don't have the doubt. You have the doubt. No, check the pillar. So he strikes the pillar. And from this pillar, a form that he's never seen and never thought of in his imagination has emerged, which is a form that has a lion head and a human body.
There's a very cool assassination story here as well.
Oh yeah. And there is the world's best designer award, which should go to Hiranyakashipu for this, because he is one Rakshasa. To avoid death, he says, I should not die at the hands of a man. I should not die at the hands of an animal.
I think he goes through a penance.
Yes.
He prays to
Brahma. Yes.
And he's successful with it. Brahma appears in front of him. And he asks Brahma that, can you give me immortality?
Yeah.
And Brahma says, no, but maybe you can ask for conditions related to your death.
Yeah. So Brahma says, I only don't have immortality. What I'll give you. So then he says, okay, my objective is what? I want to go past death. No. Death can happen at the hands of a human or an animal. So they can't kill me. Death can happen inside or outside. I should not die inside. I should not die outside. Death has to happen during the day or during the night. None of these should affect me. So he lists out all these conditions, thinking that he's oversmarted death. But when his death appears, it respects all his conditions. A beautiful aspect of Vishnu, any devata for that matter, is you ask the most complicated asks. Your asks will be respected, but you'll still get whooped if your asking wasn't coming from the right place. So he comes in this beautiful but never seen before form of an animal and a human. It looks like, we call it Narasimha because Nara is human and Simha is lion. But the Bhagavad Purana, which describes this, says, Stambhe sabhayam namrigam. It's not an animal. Namanusham. It's not a human being. It's essentially what Vishnu is. It appears like it's this, but it's not this. That's the avatara. We're worshipping a boar. No. It appears like we're worshipping a boar, but we're worshipping something that is operating like a boar. Something that is operating like a lion. So it takes you into the essence of understanding that he is in these dualities, but he's beyond them. So in this case, Narasimha is one aspect of Vishnu that really talks about how he came because Prahlada was challenged. He came because Hiranyakashipu said, prove to me that your God is there. And Prahlada says he's there. So to reaffirm his bhakta's words, he says, I'll come. And he took one form, probably one of the only stories that we see where a form came just for the sake of one devotee. Because this devotee said, yeah, he's there, I know. So Narasimha is considered to be extraordinary. Again, Vishnu and astrology, Narasimha can remove extremely unfortunate things that are written for you. He can wipe them out. If somebody has an accident and you're worried about somebody's untimely death, immediate worship to Narasimha can cure them. Because Narasimha came like this. The story is telling you he worship him, he'll come like this. He didn't say, okay, I will come and then I will be born, I will sit in somebody's womb. No, that happens in other avatars, but doesn't happen with this. Because he says, you call me, I'll come. I'm right there. You just have to call.
Do you know a Narasimha mantra?
Yes. And I've seen what Narasimha does to the body. It heats the body up. Because Narasimha is all about Agni Swarupa. It heats it up in a good way. You have to be able to receive it. And Narasimha sadhana, if you see even when serious upasakas of Narasimha, when they worship Narasimha, they'll place him in water. Because you need to be able to control that energy. You need to know how to hold that energy. Again, within Narasimha also, there is this understanding that he's a very intense form. Because when he goes to kill Hiranyakashipu, there is a Swarupam that we call as Ugra Narasimha. Ugra means his intense form. And you will see this in sculptures again and images where he takes out Hiranyakashipu's intestines and he's seated Hiranyakashipu on his lap. And he takes out his intestines and wears them as a mala. And you will see this in temples of Karnataka on carved. It's beautiful, but it is scary. There is no doubt that it does instill some amount of fear, saying, oh my goodness. But the same image that is showing you all of this supposed gore is also showing you a baby Prahlada looking in great awe. So it's telling you that you don't have to fear if you are operating from that space of love. The same Narasimha will become calm for you.
This is what I love about being Hindu. It's so cool.
It is, and it's so democratic. It'll just allow you the freedom to just connect with whatever you want. The same Narasimha that's so fierce can become extremely gentle for you. Okay, no, I'm not able to connect to this energy. It's intense for me. Okay, there is a Rama, there is a Krishna, there is a Vitthala, there is a Matsya, there is a Kurma. You name it, it's there. It's about what you are ready for. Ultimately, these forms will also, like you said earlier, right? They will see what works for you best, and they will tailor make themselves and appear for you like that. So that of course extends to anything in the divine space, which is why in the Hanuman Chalisa also Tulsidas says, he says apana tejas samharo ape. He reduced his tejas because he knew it was too much for the world to take. Similarly, Vishnu also knows that, okay, for the world it may look like, oh, it's Ugra Narasimha, but as far as Prahlada is concerned, it's the father of the universe, my father is here. So this is Narasimha Avataram, which is a phenomenal avataram in itself. We could have a whole 6-day conversation around Narasimha and I wouldn't run out of things to say.
Is there stories related to Narasimha after Prahlad? There
Yes,
are.
yes.
He appears again.
He remains in certain places. So there are a lot of kshetras. This is where the idea of kshetras also comes in. There are spaces where Narasimha is still said to roam. And one of them is the place, the sacred space in Andhra, which is called as Ahobilam. This is supposed to be the spot where he killed Hiranyakashipu. And Ahobilam is a forest. In Ahobilam, if you want to visit Narasimha's temples, there are 9 forms of Narasimha called Navanarasimha. The kind of experiences people have had, and this is also what makes us realize Hinduism is not only about Puranas and Itihasas and what happened there. It's about real time experiences that people are having now. In the context of Narasimha, there was a lady from Azerbaijan who had this dream, nowhere connected to India except that she fell in love with Krishna. But she has a dream late in her life in which Krishna says, come and serve me in the forest. And she lands up here in Hyderabad, insisting that she has to go to Ahobilam. And she meets some people who tell her, listen, you're a Krishna devotee, go to Vrindavan. She says, no way. He's not going to let me be in ease until I go to Ahobilam. She goes there, and if you go to Ahobilam, it's not that, oh, there are 5 steps and there's a temple. It's wilderness. The 9th Narasimha on top, you cannot access unless you are physically able and unless he allows you permission to come there. And such a woman, at a time when even the priest goes only once a month, Narasimha's star is Swati Nakshatram. On that day alone, the priest used to go there at that time. He wouldn't even go regularly. She said, I'll go stay in the caves, doesn't matter. And she stayed there. The kind of, if I read accounts of her life, and this happened like about, I think if I'm not mistaken, a decade or 2 back, the kind of experiences she had, people would hear her screaming late at night in her small little cave room. And then the next day they would ask her, what happened? Who are you screaming at? She said, oh, I was screaming at Narasimha because he said he'd come for dinner, but then he didn't come for dinner. So when he came, I threw the pans at him and said, get out, go eat somewhere else because you said you'll not eat with me. makes you think, oh, I was thinking Narasimha is some extremely angry, unapproachable, intense god. But here is a woman shouting at him saying, you promised you'll come for dinner, but you didn't come. That is the love that's hidden in that form. And ultimately, when she was found lifeless, her head, there's a picture of it available online. Her head is fallen, her entire body is fallen on a chair where there's a Radha Krishna and a Narasimha behind that. That's how she left her body here. So these forms are essentially so deeply personal. You have to go beyond the layers. You have to go beyond saying that it's looking fierce for me. I don't understand. I don't understand it is still okay. It's too much for me. Rama and Krishna can also be fierce. We have this assumption of bracketing. No, Narasimha is too intense for me. Rama and Krishna is... Yes, you may connect more with one. But Rama can become fierce too. Krishna can become fierce, and they did during the wars respectively that they were in. Narasimha can also become gentle. The key to any of these is to remain in that sadhana long enough to say, how much can I allow myself to be picked up by you? So that's a long process, but testimony enough to say that it's possible for people.
Let's talk about sadhana briefly before moving on with the Dashavataras story.
Of which we've reached only 4. Yeah.
Sadhana is something that I learned only through the course of the podcast, perhaps only a couple of years ago, out of a 5-year journey of the show. Sadhana is effectively a set of practices that you're supposed to follow with a sense of discipline, and you're supposed to be strict with yourself about doing your sadhana. If done correctly, to oversimplify it, you go closer to the deity that you're praying to. This is the core aspect of what sadhana entails. I was born in a pretty religious Hindu family. Knowing that you should do your puja, you should, be chanting mantras, you should be meditating. I didn't have a concept of sadhana. And I probably represent a lot of Hindus in our country who kind of know Hinduism on a surface level, but don't understand that the nature of Hinduism is very much like a martial art. And you can go deeper into the practice depending on how disciplined you're willing to be and depending on the kind of knowledge seeking that you're going about.
Right.
Would you like to add anything or correct me in anything that I said?
So I think the idea of sadhana begins with this. It begins with discipline. Now, when we look at sadhana, one aspect is the prescribed notion that, I won't say notion, the prescribed understanding that yes, you show up to a practice dedicatedly, sincerely. So it's about showing up. But at some point, it stops being that. Sadhana, saying that, okay, I'll be regular with my upasana, with my worship, that I will connect, I will do my best to connect. But sadhana is not restricted to that time that you are sitting down and saying, I'm doing this practice. That the way that sadhana treats an individual is, you do this practice. Say you do some mantram, you do some japam, some puja, whatever it is that you do. That brief period that you do it for the day should inform the remaining 24 hours, the remaining 23 and a half, or how many hours you do it. The objective is take what you're experiencing here. In sadhana, what are you doing? You are essentially connecting yourself to the divine, right? This is, the focus of this is to say, you are the source of light. I am connecting to you. I want you to inspire me. But I don't want my inspiration to stop in this few minutes that I'm with you. I want it to go on for the whole day. So sadhana moves, and it moves the person who is doing it into a space of deep love, where whatever they are doing and seeing during that time will extend beyond.
How can you begin your sadhana in life?
By being willing to let go of any notions of this is who I am and this is what I can do. Because the divine will keep asking you, is this who you are? The divine will keep questioning that. The best example of that is Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. When he fell in love with Kali, like he washed over every notion that I am a male, I am a Brahmin, I am this. He said, all of these things are holding me back. I just want to be in love. I want to really let her take over my body. And this is being said by the chief priest of the Kali temple. So in the morning when he would have to go and pick flowers for her worship, sometimes he would, when he was about to pluck the flowers, he would see Kali sitting on them and Kali playing with the flowers. So he'd say, puja is done. Now here is challenging conditioning. But sadhana says the puja has to be done. But if you are true enough to your sadhana will seep over. It's like it's a pot of milk that's boiling over. It will naturally spread over anything. How do you begin it? You begin it by saying, you take over. I'll just do this much is possible for me. Give me opportunity to do more. One of the best ways I have seen personally to really begin your sadhana is go to an energized place. Because we're extremely lucky to be in the vicinity of so many charged spaces where, keep aside the idea of divinity, keep aside the idea of manifestation and incarnation, everything. Fundamentally, if you look at kshetras, for hundreds and thousands of years, people have just been going to one consecrated space and they are manifesting positivity over there. They are going there with a positive intention. By virtue of their positive thoughts alone, a space is becoming charged. Add to that now that layer of divinity saying, yes, this ground is fundamentally powerful. You want to understand, you want to begin Krishna sadhana, go and roll in the mud of Vrindavan. You will understand it better than any textbook can teach you. Want to understand Narasimha, go spend time in Ahobilam. Want to understand Rama, Krishna, whatever it may be. Be willing to just wash over and be washed over by.
Can I give sadhana. You certain deities' names and can you direct the audience to places?
If I know, I'm happy to.
Okay, let's start basic. Ganesh.
The origin of Ganapati Aradhana for this whole world is a place called Mayura Kshetra or Morgaon. Morgaon, very close to Pune, is where the first manifestation of Ganapati happened. You want to connect with Ganapati, go to Morgaon. Okay. Sit there. Again, when we look at a Kshetra, in today's context, we look at the temple and the idol or the Vigraham. I'll not call it idol, call it the Vigraham. But the way to understand it, and this is the way I have been taught, is the Vigraham always comes later. The Vigraham is a reminder of the ground. So when you go to a temple, most often we are looking at the Vigraham and saying, yes, this is the ultimate. That is a representation of the ultimate. The ultimate is the ground. Sit anywhere in that proximity. You want to be in Morgaon, don't be worried about the crowds saying, oh, it's pretty crowded. How I got only a minute in there. You don't have to. You can be anywhere in Morgaon. Sit in that space, connect with Ganapati. Be willing to do it for long enough. And again, do it with the intention that this doesn't just apply to Morgaon. Do it with the intention that you're not waiting for a miracle. You're waiting for yourself to be washed by love. But yes, to answer your question, Ganapati, Morgaon, ideal.
Kalima.
Kali would be Kali Ghat to start with.
Which is?
Kolkata. If Kali Ghat, on one hand I would also say Dakshineshwar. I would say Dakshineshwar because Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, his presence is also felt there.
Where?
In Dakshineshwar. This is the temple where he was the officiating priest as well. And by virtue of him being a bridge to Kali, in Dakshineshwar, it's a very, very gentle energy.
Where is it?
It's very close to Kolkata. It's about an hour and a half. It's by the banks of Ganga. And Dakshineshwar is where the goddess is Dakshineshwari. Bhavatarini is her name over there. And for the world, she looks very fierce. But Paramahamsa, to him, he said, I see the gentle mother of the universe over there. So Kali, I would say Kali Ghat or Dakshineshwar. There are other places also, but I'm speaking from my heart. So
Hanumanji.
Hanuman, go to a Rama temple. Go to a Rama Kshetra. You want to really experience Hanuman? Go to Bhadrachalam. Bhadrachalam is in Andhra Pradesh. This is where Rama is atop a small hillock. It is Rama, on his lap is Sita, and on his left side is Lakshmana Swami. There's no Hanuman here because Rama, Sita and Lakshmana are said to have visited here during their exile. This was prior to her being abducted and Hanuman hadn't yet met Rama by then. But you can feel Hanuman's energy there. Also, the best place to experience Hanuman's energy is in the middle of a banana field. Because Hanuman's residence, his permanent residence is in the mountains in the Himalaya Parvatam in a place called Gandhamadana Parvatam. The name of this mountain is Gandhamadana. In the Gandhamadana mountain, there is a field full of banana plantations. In that banana plantations or Kadali Vanam, Hanuman is there. You want to meditate on Hanuman anytime, go to a banana plantation. You'll access his energy like this. Why? Because animal head, human body. He'll appear like this. So, yes.
You're the real deal, man. You're the real deal.
He is the real deal, not me.
I don't know how you accumulated so much, but definitely an outcome of your sadhana as well. Shiva.
Any of the Jyotirlingas. So here's the thing. When you look at the Jyotirlingas also, there are 12 different Dwadasha Jyotirlingas, as we call it. The list is actually more expensive than 12. That has been condensed to 12. What is the epicenter of Shiva? Or I won't say the epicenter of Shaivism, because that becomes a historical question. But where can you experience Shiva concentrated with all his energies? I have seen multiple places, but one that unilaterally stands out in every sadhaka's experience, Kashi. Kashi it's a place that he said, I will not let this place dissolve when the rest of the worlds collapse. I will pick up Kashi with my Trishulam and I will hold it up. You want to connect with me? Come here. And Kashi is, I mean, the air shakes with Shivanamam over there. So Kashi, 100%. I mean, the kind of influences it has seen, not just from Shaivism, but from Vaishnavism, from Shaktam. You want to experience anything? Actually go to Kashi. But Shiva in particular, he's the Lord of the universe. Vishwanatha is right there. So yes, Kashi. I would also say Chidambaram. Chidambaram is in Tamil Nadu. This is where Shiva first appeared as Nataraja, the cosmic dancer. The first and the only place where he is seen dancing. There are other temples to Nataraja where you see Vigrahams of Nataraja, but it is in Chidambaram that he manifested and said, I will dance. Because this place, which is the geomagnetic center of the universe, this place alone has the capacity to hold my legs while I dance. So Chidambaram, you can feel the dancer's energy. I was just there 3 days ago, and every time I go, I realize there is movement in this space. Kashi is a completely different vibe. Chidambaram is a different vibe. Both of Shiva. Because in these places, he's waiting to reveal himself. So each of these places that I mentioned, there's a beautiful explanation I read that said, divinity is waiting, it's exploding with joy to say, is someone coming? Can I reveal myself? Because divinity is that playfully excited. You go to Kashi, you will see it. The kind of experiences people continue to have in a place like this. You will have it in any of the lingas, any Jyotirlingas, any of the Panchabhuta lingas. There are different Shiva Kshetras. But the epicenter, it is said that every Shiva who resides in every lingam in the universe, all of those lingas together, the power of Shiva in each of those lingas comes and dissolves itself in Chidambaram at night. So you go to Chidambaram, you're effectively worshipping Shiva that is across the universe. But you just have to be willing to be there to see that magic unfold. So yes, I hope you visit Chidambaram.
Where is it exactly in Tamil Nadu?
It's very close to Pondicherry. It's about 2 hours away from Pondicherry. It's that whole belt is rich with temples.
Towards Chennai?
No, away from Chennai.
Okay.
Yes. That whole belt has a host of history also attached to it in terms of the Cholas, different dynasties that came in and built the temples, sustained them. And what you also see as a result of this is a beautiful collection of literature, of music, of cultural forms that have developed around these kshetras. But Chidambaram is special. I'm telling you. Chidambaram also corresponds to the chakra here, the Anahata chakra. So it opens up your heart in a very, very unique way. But you got me in a tough place to choose between Chidambaram and Kashi, so I won't choose. I'll just tell you, go to either of these places to experience Shiva. Yes.
The south of our country is unexplored by people who are not from the south of our country.
Yeah.
I fortunately, I've had a chance to explore it a bit just thanks to being a YouTuber. You get to travel across the country. But if I speak to many of my friends who are ethnically not from South India, they've really not traveled through the south of the country, other than like a few places. But there's so many mysteries and so much spiritual potency that's hidden in the south, man.
Yes, absolutely. Right? And that's also because the reason it remains a bit of a mystery for people who are not from there or not familiar is you will see a lot of regionality also that becomes a part of it. In the sense, now let's say a kshetram like Ayodhya. Ayodhya is largely known by the name Ayodhya itself, right? There isn't a regional variant that we refer to it. Across the country, everyone identifies it as Ayodhya. But you come to the south, there will be a Sanskrit name that is given to this place. But more often than not, you will see it is not necessarily called that. So for example, there are 5 temples across Tamil Nadu and Andhra where Shiva embodies the 5 elements, the elements of the Panchamahabhutas, that is earth, water, fire, air and space. So Shiva represents that element. One of the temples is known as Tiruvannaikoil. Tiruvannaikoil is not going to be easy for someone who's not familiar to say it. It's a Tamil word. The Sanskritam word is Jambukeshwara. So what happens with this kind of regional layering is it doesn't become accessible. It's not easy for someone to connect and necessarily say, okay, I understand. Also the legends, the complexity, the intersection of different things. There's the intersection of history meets Puranas. Not to say that they're different things, but there is different chronologies meeting. There is also different practices meeting. On one hand, you will see a very ritualistic coded practice that is coming from a Brahmin community that is saying this is how the space has to be maintained. But you will also see a lot of indigenous influences in the same space. So it can get a little complex in terms of saying it's what's happening here. But the South is a mystery that is waiting to be explored. I think the easier ways for people who are watching the show and not necessarily that familiar with it would be not to get overwhelmed by the experience. I've seen a lot of people do this, including South Indians. They'll do one 4-day Tamil Nadu trip. They'll visit Rameshwaram, Madurai, Dhanushkodi, some 40 places. At the end of them, I've asked people, so how was Rameshwaram? They'll just, which one was Rameshwaram? 3rd temple? No, 6th temple. The experience is erased. So although there is this temptation to say, okay, if you go to Chidambaram also, around Chidambaram, you have like more than 40 different places you can visit, all of which have their own history. I would go against a popular belief and say, don't visit all 40 together. Visit Chidambaram, come back. Let Chidambaram sit in your heart. Next time you want to go somewhere else, add one thing to Chidambaram. Don't make the mistake of putting too much on your plate.
Where are you from ethnically?
Ethnically, I'm from Andhra Pradesh. Born and brought up in Bangalore. But I more familiar with the southern parts of the country, even in terms of kshetras.
Bro, generally, I know it's wrong to generalize, but say the youth from the southern part of our country, do they feel like that about the north?
In terms of?
Like what I said that you'll see a lot of North Indians not having traveled across the south. But is the reverse also true?
So in the north, the presence of Kashi, the presence of Naimisharanyam, which is in Uttar Pradesh, the presence of Badri, of Kedarnath, Amarnath, all of this automatically has made the Vindhyas, everything beyond north of the Vindhyas, has made these very desirable places for sadhakas from the south. So, like you said, I don't know if it is right to generalize and say that there is this intimidation about the north. The intimidation largely disappears because although the places are in the north, a lot of stories concerning these places are regularly told in the south. So, stories about, say, Naimisharanyam, although it's in UP, you go to Naimisharanyam, you will feel like it's a mini Andhra Pradesh only, because there are scores of devotees and pilgrims that are regularly visiting there. So they've set up like, circuits and 3-day tours, 5-day tours, etc. So it's a lot more accessible, not in terms of logistics, but in terms of familiarity. Saying, yeah, Naimisharanyam, no? Every time we hear this story, we know that it is being told in Naimisharanyam. So familiarity comes in.
Yeah. My whack thought is that I have like Tamil bros, deep Hanuman bhaks, and I have Jat bros who are deep Hanuman bhaks also. Yeah. Such different personalities.
Totally.
Praying to the same deity.
Exactly.
That's the beauty of Sanatan Dharma.
That is the beauty of Sanatana Dharma. That you can be anywhere on any spectrum and you can connect to some deity in such an individualistic way that it makes you think how expansive is this thought process. It has space for everyone.
There's something about the geographical region of the subcontinent, man.
Yeah.
I do believe that there's deities in multiple faiths.
Yeah.
I'm talking about outside of Hinduism as well. And there have been powerful deities in powerful religions which are not to be found in the modern day version of Earth that we know.
Yeah.
For example, Egyptian culture, Mesopotamian, South American culture. But for some reason, the subcontinental deities as well as the subcontinental culture survived.
Yeah.
There's some role for the subcontinent to play for sure.
Absolutely.
On the world stage. But anyway, back to the story.
So coming back to the world of Vishnu, also just to kind of, tie that loose end about wanting to experience divinity anywhere. So the beauty about Vishnu is that Vaishnavism is everywhere in this country. So it's not to say that Ganapati is not important outside Maharashtra. Of course he is. But his heartbeat is felt in Maharashtra. But Vishnu, you want to connect to him as Narasimha, like I said, go to Ahobilam. You want to connect to him as Rama, Ayodhya is waiting for you. You want to connect to him as Krishna, Vrindavan is there. So in various parts, he ties the whole subcontinent together. Same about Shakti as well, no? Shakti in the south, Upasana, worshipping of Shakti in the south is very different from Shakti in the north, but present everywhere. So you can easily tie these forces up by one common idea of, okay, I just want to understand Vishnu. The whole country will become your canvas to explore then. So, using that to go back to the story. So in the sequence of avatars, Narasimha is the fourth. After this comes, again, now you see, up till now we saw how he came for very specific purposes. It becomes very clear by now that Vishnu comes as the devata that rules intellect and says, this is also what happens in sadhana, that as your sadhana increases, a sense of confidence also comes that I can do. Because sadhana by default will bring powers into your realm of control. These powers are byproducts. They are called siddhis. You will acquire siddhis by virtue of being in sadhana, because what happens in sadhana is essentially you are rubbing the dust off the mirror. So the sun is going to shine the second that layer of dust is gone. But because the sun is shining and you're able to see everything around, don't think it's the power of the mirror, it's the power of the sun. And that's when Vishnu comes in again in this story to say, hey, there is this sadhaka who's known in the three worlds for being such a generous soul. And he believes, I can give anyone anything. He's a good person, he means well. But Vishnu recognizes this as borderline arrogance and says, this is detrimental to your sadhana, so I'll come and I'll teach you a lesson. Not in a harsh way where I'll send you away, but I'll check your pride.
What was the sadhaka's name?
The sadhaka's name is Bali, or Mahabali as he's called, Bali Chakravarti. He's a king. And this king takes it upon himself to organize this massive yajna. And he says, anybody who comes in this yajna, whatever they ask, I will give. So Vishnu takes birth as the son of Aditi and Kashyapa. Kashyapa is a rishi, Aditi is his wife, and Aditi is also they are also the parents of all the devatas, of Indra and the other devatas. Vishnu is born to them as Vamana. So he's born as a dwarf. And he grows in size very soon. And he appears as in Sanskrit we call him a Vatu, a small Brahmana aged between 5 to 8 years, who has just begun his process of learning Vedas. So this little boy, or rather Vishnu disguised as this little boy, he appears in Bali's yajna. And the story is so beautiful because Bali looks at him and he's stunned. Bali notices him from a distance and he says, who is that boy? How is he glowing with this kind of radiance? And he's immediately attracted to him. So he goes to him and he says, ask me for anything. So the boy says, they have a conversation. And the boy says, I just want 3 pieces of land. So he says, that's it. I mean, I'm the emperor of the 3 worlds. I can give you much more than that. Please ask. This is that. Pucho na. He says, you give me 3 pieces, I'm content. He says, okay, I'll give you. And he pours water. And this is the Puranic equivalent of signing a deed. He pours water into Vamana's hand to seal the deal. The second he does that, this boy starts to grow in size. So as he grows in size, with 1 foot, he covers the earth. With the next foot, he covers everything beyond. He was promised 3 foot, not 3 feet, not 3 square feet, but 3 footsteps. So he looks at Bali and he says, where's the third? You're a man of your word, right? Where is the 3rd foot now? And Bali says, I know where the 3rd foot, where you can place your 3rd foot. And he bends his head down. He says, place it on my head, which is essentially a way of communicating that my arrogance has been quelled with this. This immediately will lead a cryptic to ask, with his 1st foot, he's covered the earth. Bali is inside the earth only. No, how can Bali's head be a separate space? This space is different from this space. That's all the story is trying to tell you. The external world is different. The internal world, he conquered that. And that's how Vamana, the dwarf, became the one who controlled the 3 worlds, Trivikrama. Again, a beautiful connection between Vaishnavism and Shaktam. In Vaishnavam, he's called Trivikrama. Vikrama is one who controls, who rules. He rules the 3 worlds, Trivikrama. In Shaktam, she is the most beautiful one across the 3 worlds, so she's called Tripura Sundari. 3 comes as a commonality here. Again, showcasing parallels. Everywhere parallels come out. We just have to find them in the story. So this is Vamana.
The Chiranjeevi. Where do we even begin this topic?
The midpoint of the avatarams, no? 5 are over. Matsya, Kurma, Varaha, Narasimha, Vamana. Now, this also teaches us beyond this linear demarcation of avatars, where we say, okay, these are 10. Within these avatars and beyond, there are other ways to categorize them. One way to categorize is these 10. But even within this, you have different categories. For example, there are 3 avatars that are known as Purna avatars. They are considered to be complete manifestations of Vishnu. So the essence of Vishnu's entire energy, Vishnu's entire Shakti is present in those 3. One is Narasimha, which we just spoke about. The other 2 are Rama and Krishna. Then there is another category that is called as Avesha avataram. Avesha means to take control of. This avataram, Parshurama represents. So what happens here is Parshurama is a rishi. He is a rishi into whom 2 digits, for the lack of a better word, 2 portions, let's say portions, 2 portions of Vishnu's energy take control. And those instill into him a divine purpose that appears to be very violent, which is that he takes it upon himself to rid the earth of the burden of 21,000 kings.
Why 2 digits?
These 2 kalas is how much this Muni is meant to receive from Vishnu. Meaning that these 2 will perform the job. What he's supposed to do, he's supposed to achieve the death of 21,000 adharmic kings, adharmic rajas. 2 digits of Vishnu is enough for that. Now, interestingly, so Parshurama does that, right? He takes an oath. Essentially, there is his own life story, or the Avatara story tells us that he finds that his father has been beheaded because of these kings and their sense of arrogance. So to check that, he says, I'll rid the earth, which is Vishnu renewing his pact to Bhudevi, saying, anytime somebody takes you for granted, I will come and I will ensure that balance is restored. Now, when this is finished, this is a very beautiful avataram because this avataram overlaps into the next one. Right after Parshurama comes Rama. Parshurama and Rama meet. When do they meet? They meet in Ramayanam at the time when Rama and Sita they've gotten married in Vitthala. Shiva Dhanush is broken. He breaks Shiva's bow, Rama. I know I'm jumping to the next avataram, but that's to show how the connect happens here. As soon as Shiva's bow is broken, Sita comes, marries him, and that prophecy is honored, or rather Janaka's condition is fulfilled, that only somebody who breaks the bow or somebody who lifts the bow can marry his daughter, and he breaks it. They get married. When they're leaving Mithila, Parshurama appears. And he says, who is it who had the audacity to break my Ishtadevata's bow? My Ishtadevata is Shiva. So in that point, he gets into a combat with Rama.
Really?
Yeah. And Parshurama recognizes that this is none other than Vishnu. Parshurama himself, who is an avataram, recognizes that this is the complete manifestation of the Lord in front of me. He gifts him Vishnu's bow. This ties up that story. The 2 portions of Vishnu's divinity that entered Parshurama, Parshurama submits them back to Rama. So it enters him as an Avesham and he becomes an Avesha avataram. He hands it over and after that he continues as Parshurama Muni. So that is why he remains as a Chiranjeevi. One is because Vishnu's divinity entered him and exited him. But the Chiranjeevitvam or the immortality is also a blessing that is bestowed upon him. So Parshurama is a very, very interesting avataram that again talks about the idea of intense protection. It's fierce protection. Protection isn't always gentle and kind. Sometimes it needs to be fierce. But when it takes over, it can wreak havoc in the negative spaces of the mind. So Parshurama Upasana is meant to instill fear into the negative aspects that reside within us, such that they're altogether annihilated. Parshurama creates way for that positivity. So very, very strong avataram. Because it's Avesham, no? It's like Vishnu took control of that Muni. It's like this Muni becomes possessed. So that is a little bit about Parshurama. But again, you touch Parshurama and what other subjects will open up. On one hand, Parshurama leads us into his mother. The worship of his mother is a beautiful cult which is seen in the southern parts of the country, which is called, his mother is Renuka Devi. So there is a very, very interesting story about her. Renuka Devi is known for the power of her chastity. Parshurama's father, Jamadagni, one day he notices that Renuka Devi's mind and there is some desire that is born within her. So as a Leela, we see the story in which he asks all his other sons, saying, will you all do as I tell you to without asking any questions? So they say, what do you want us to do? Kill your mother. Behead her. Because she has lost her chastity. By virtue of thought. They all say no. He looks at Parshurama. Parshurama's father, Jamadagni, looks at Parshurama and he says, will you kill her? Will you behead her? He says, okay, I'll do it. So he beheads his mother. Jamadagni is so moved that his son didn't ask any questions. He did as he was told, that he asks him saying, ask me for a boon. I'll give you anything you want. He says, bring my mother back to life. So he says, okay, so be it. Put your mother's head back on her body. So Parshurama, in his excitement to put his mother's head back on her body, he doesn't notice that he's picked up the head of someone else, of another lady, and he puts this head onto his mother's body, which results in the fusion of two different people coming into one body, which is why this goddess was previously called as Renuka, who now had the head of another woman whose name was Yellamma, has now merged into one goddess called Renuka Yellamma. Extremely popular cult in the southern parts of the country. What is particularly interesting about this cult is, this goddess is the patron deity of the transgender community. Because the story links itself in such a way, the sons, or rather Parshurama's brothers, who said no when their father said that, will you do what I ask you to? They said no. He curses them to lose their masculinity. So when his wife comes back in this form, they all go and seek shelter with her, with Renuka Yellamma. And she says, I will constantly watch out for you. You are all my children. Which is why if you see, Renuka Yellamma has a temple in Karnataka called Saudatti. In Saudatti, the transgender community that worships there, it's so beautiful. This is inclusivity in so many ways, and it's not a token homage to the idea. Because here, parents who feel that their children are about to express themselves in a different way, they take them to Saudatti, communities close by, and then they declare there that the goddess has chosen this person. So the people that declare themselves or recognize themselves to be transgenders are said to be chosen by the goddess herself.
Wow.
All of this through one Parshurama. One Parshurama you open, you'll understand this. Renuka, on one hand, that is the patron deity for communities that are otherwise marginalized, also connects to the Dashamahavidya. The Chinnamasta Vidya is identical to Renuka's Swarupam. It's mind-blowing. Because when you look at Renuka, there is bloodshed. There is the head that is decapitated and all of this that happens. Chinnamasta is the goddess, one of the Vidyas, whose head is removed and blood is pouring and she's consuming her own blood. So one connects to another. Parshurama also connects to Dattatreya, because Dattatreya is Parshurama's guru. So he learns all about Shakti from Dattatreya Swami. So he continues to do Upasana. Parshurama even now roams in the western ghats of the country. He's like Dattatreya. He roams around freely and he can be accessed. Karna is somebody who tapped into the power of Parshurama in the Mahabharata. There are a host of disciples of Parshurama, but he remains as a Chiranjeevi, blessing those who are sincere seekers.
I think he's also meant to become Kalki Avatar's guru, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, there is one version that says this, that he will, because he knows Astra Vidya, Shastra Vidya, the knowledge of various kinds of weapons and the mantras associated with them. Eventually, when Kalki comes, because Kalki is the only avataram in this that is yet to come, at that time, Parshurama will become a guru to him, is what I've also read one or two versions speaking about that. But Parshurama is considered to be a Jnana Swarupam because of the knowledge that he carries within himself, because his guru is Dattatreya. And the mother goddess is his mother, Renuka. So,
what was his adversary's name?
Kartavirya Arjuna.
Kartavirya Arjuna.
Yes. Kartavirya Arjuna is known as somebody with 1,000 hands. Sahasrabahu, he is called as. And they both get into huge combat.
Sahasra Arjun.
Sahasra.
When I was a kid, there was an evolved person who told me that when Sahasra Arjuna, Kartavirya Arjun was killed, he was also given a boon to be remembered as a deity. But you only call out his name when you've lost something of great importance.
Yes.
And if you find that thing, then you light a diya in his name.
There is a Kartavirya Arjuna shloka. I have seen this. I have seen how people have lost phones, lost money, lost things, my immediate near and dear ones. And my mother chants this whenever something major has gone missing. And I've seen what it's done. because he has 1,000 hands. So the shlokam also says this. It says, Kartavirya Arjuno nama Rajabahum Sahasravan Tasya Smarana Matrena. By thinking of you, Tasya Smarana Matrena Gatam Nashtam Cha Labhyate. I will find Gatam Nashtam, what has been lost, will be found again. So Kartavirya Arjuna is supposed to help you in moments when you cannot find anything. So it's a miraculous shloka. It does the job every single time. So again, these stories go beyond binaries, no? Kartavirya Arjuna has a persona that is visibly negative in many stories because he's also full of pride and he's gloating with that pride. But he also is benevolent. So these shades come out beautifully. Through avataras of Vishnu, what we learn is that as people, we are not black and white. We exist in the grey. The idea is the second you tap into divinity, you can go beyond the binaries. The binaries will still exist, but they'll not bother you anymore. But these stories teach you to appreciate the binaries. They teach you to appreciate the binaries and everything in between them. So that is Kartavirya Arjuna. All of these characters he centered around one Parshurama. Renuka Yalamma, Chinnamasta, Jamadagni, Kartavirya Arjuna. So phenomenal avataram in himself.
Can we talk a little bit about Dattatreya?
Absolutely. Dattatreya, his guru, and Dattatreya, the guru who breathes and walks in the Sahyadri Parvatas till date. A form, again, of Vishnu, an avataram of Vishnu, Dattatreya is. He's, of course, Trimurti Swarupam. Brahma, Vishnu and Maheshwara, the three heads of Dattatreya, born as the son of Atri and Anasuya. Dattatreya is one of those Swarupams who, if you look at Narasimha, he came to protect Prahlada. Look at Matsya, he came when the world was flooding. Look at Kurma, he came when Mandara Parvatam was sinking. All of these, you can see the imminent danger or you can see the imminent need for this. But Dattatreya appears when the need is not physical. Dattatreya appears to those who say, I want to really understand the path to the self. So Dattatreya is a guru to countless people till date. Again, Dattatreya Upasana is concentrated in Maharashtra and Gujarat. You'll see a host of Datta Kshetras here and the Paramparas, beginning with Dattatreya Swami, the host of gurus that came after him as well, Sripada Vallabha and many of them. They're
Sripada Vallabha Digambara.
Absolutely. All of them in the Datta Sampradaya. Right? It's the Guru Swarupam of Vishnu is Dattatreya. So this brings me to classify, when we look at any Devata in Sanatana Dharma, there are three classifications that every Devata will have. One is Ugramurtis. These are intense forms. These are the forms that you will reach out to, that you can reach out to when you are in an imminent danger. So let's take, since we are speaking about Vishnu, let's look at Vishnu's Ugra Swarupams will be Narasimha, will be Parshurama. All of these are Swarupams that you need immediately to come and protect you. The second category after Ugra is a second category that we call as Saumya Swarupams. These are gentle Swarupams, visibly gentle, where you can see Vishnu with his Parivaram, where you can see that he is also in family mode. So these are for your materialistic longings. Again, Sanatana Dharma is not saying, no, reject all of it. No, ask for it. If you want your family to be well, you're praying for your folks' health, there's nothing wrong in it. You're praying for your folks to be wealthy, nothing wrong in it. So for this, you reach out to him when he's with his Parivaram, Sri Devi, Bhudevi, Garuda, Vishwaksena, Adishesha, all of them will be around him. This is the Saumya Murti, when he's reclining, all of these. The third is Jnana Murtis. Jnana Murtis are when you are seeking to go within the self. Vishnu's Jnana Avataram is Hayagriva, horse-headed, again, human-bodied. Haya is horse, Hayavadana. This is Vishnu as the primordial guru is called as Hayagriva. Another Guru Swarupam of Vishnu is Dattatreya. These are Swarupams where you want to know about the self, Dattatreya will open that path. Dattatreya reveals to Parshurama what connects the three bodies. The physical body, the Sthula Sharira, the Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body, and the Karana Sharira, the causal body. What connects these three? What spark of life that connects them, which is called as Tripura. And he reveals to him an entire text that is called Tripura Rahasyam, which is a phenomenal Shakta text. Again, Vishnu is the guru to reveal something about Shakti.
Tripura's?
Rahasya. Yes. Tripura Rahasyam deals with understanding the self from a Shakta perspective.
Where does one find these texts in the modern day written in English?
Oh, there are beautiful translations available. Yes, absolutely. Because these kind of texts, especially, it has caught the fascination of Easterners and Westerners alike. Because it goes so much into the self that it prods you to think. So, good solid work has been done on these subjects. Again, the source of this is Guru, Vishnu's Guru Swarupam, which is Dattatreya, in this case, Parshurama's Guru. Dattatreya's presence features in, of course, by himself, there's an entire Datta Charitra, which people also do regular reading and recitation of his Charitram. In addition to this, you will also see Dattatreya making flashes of appearances in other avatarams. It's so beautiful. In Rama Avataram, when Vishnu manifests as Rama, situation has come where he is exiled from his kingdom, from Ayodhya. So he leaves to the forest. When he's coming to the forest, he meets, or rather as he's walking with Sita and Lakshmana, when they're walking in the forest, Atri and Anasuya, the parents of Dattatreya, they are at the door. Atri is at the door of his hermitage and he sees Rama coming. And he tells his wife, he tells Anasuya, it is as if our Datta has come. This is Ramayanam hinting to you that if you pray to Rama as a guru, Rama will become Dattatreya for you. Because they're identical. When he talks to Rama, he says, I feel like my son has come home. Because Dattatreya is his son. Rama's Tattvam, Dattatreya Tattvam, identical. Dattatreya,
what is Tattvam?
Tattva is essence. What do they stand for?
Energy.
24,000 shlokas in the Ramayana. Dattatreya has 24 gurus that he says, these are the gurus that I constantly learn from. He says, I learn from these 24 gurus in nature, including a python, a tree, a pigeon, you name it in nature. He says, this is what I have learned. It's a phenomenal treatise when you pick up those 24. But the 24 there serves as a link to show how Rama can become Dattatreya to you if you look at Rama as a guru. So it's how Dattatreya is fundamentally mystic, because gurus do not have a need to reveal themselves to the world. Only a true seeker will find them. Even in the case of Dattatreya, there are beautiful stories of how people have ran behind him and followed him saying, reveal your true self to me. And he has come in a disguise and says, no, I'm just this person. If your seeking is sincere enough, then only if you pass that test of sincerity, he will appear. But again, Dattatreya is one of those avatarams of Vishnu where if you're feeling mentally uneasy, if you're feeling uncomfortable, you think of Dattatreya, you will get immediate relief. So there is one version that says, Sita thought of Dattatreya in the Ramayanam again, when Ravana made her uncomfortable by he created by his Maya, he created two heads, one of Rama and one of Lakshmana, and threw it towards her. And she saw that sight. So that sight was so disturbing. Valmiki Ramayanam tells us that she looks up at Surya and she finds solace with Surya. One more Devata, when you're feeling uneasy and you just feel very repulsed after seeing something that you didn't want to see, one immediate Devata you look up at is Surya. Second is Dattatreya. For Manashanti, for your mind to be at ease, just think of Dattatreya. Because Dattatreya's smarana is enough to make you calm. So, yes, that is Dattatreya. That is barely a scratch on the surface. That is Dattatreya's Padadhuli. Yes.
We did an epic episode with Rajesh Inan.
Yes.
About Dattatreya.
Yeah.
He compared it to a Bhairav called Trishir Bhairava.
Yes, Trishira Bhairava.
Which is depicted in almost exactly the same way that Dattatreya is depicted, but in a much more fierce form. Like the expression is angrier. Yes. So again, Dattatreya is one of those topics that we will break down with you in the future, because I hear everything you're saying and I agree with everything you're saying, but we also keep calling it a combination avatar. That it was both Vishnu and Shiva.
Absolutely.
And Brahma.
Yes.
So it's a very ununderstood topic by the English-speaking part of the internet, at least. So we'll save that one for the future.
Okay, done.
Coming back to the story.
Yes.
With the Parshuram story arc, does he begin with Kartavirya Arjuna first? Is Kartavirya Arjuna somewhere in the middle of his journey, or is it at the end of his 21,000 killing spree?
No. So what happens with Parshurama is that his father is beheaded. Because his father is beheaded by Kartavirya Arjuna. Kartavirya Arjuna, so his father has a cow, a wish-fulfilling cow that gives him anything he wants. So Kartavirya Arjuna comes and demands it from Jamadagni, saying, I want it. And there is a tussle because Jamadagni doesn't keep it for himself. This wish-fulfilling cow, this Kamadhenu, is not for his own needs. This is if somebody comes to his hermitage, he requests this cow and she gives him whatever it is that is required to serve that many people. Kartavirya Arjuna wants to own it. So he takes it upon himself and he kills Jamadagni. So Parshurama hears of this. This happens later in the Avataram. But this marks the Avataram's focus. The Avataram came for this. So before that, Parshurama's Charitram doesn't go too much into detail about what all happened with him. We know him to be an Avataram or a Tapas Swarupam, somebody who is in Tapas. But when he's away at Tapas is when this happens. And then he takes it upon himself saying, I will rid the earth of 21,000 such kings that are I will spill their blood. Before this is when the entire Renuka episode also happens with his mother. So, yes.
Okay. What happens to the cow?
The cow comes back to his ashram. He releases the cow from Kartavirya Arjuna. She comes back.
Is anything said about the battle between Parshurama and Kartavirya Arjuna?
Oh, yes. That how Parshurama put his pride into place. The interesting things, because we're talking about cows, I also want to mention how when you look at stories like this, you have this concept of katha, and you will have a pratibimba, a reflective story, identical story about a tussle between a muni and a raja, a king and a rishi, about a cow, is Vasishtha and Vishwamitra. Vasishtha also has a cow, Surabhi. Vishwamitra at this point is not even a rishi. He is a king by name Kaushika. Kaushika comes to Vasishtha, and Kaushika has this pride about himself that I'm a king. So he comes to Vasishtha's hermitage and he says, can you feed me? I mean, look at how many people I've brought with me. So many of my Sena are here. He says, I can, you come, don't worry. And then Kaushika comes inside and realizes that Vasishtha has this cow and this cow can give anything. So he fights with Vasishtha and he says, I want this cow. And Vasishtha said, no, she's here because here her needs are focused on dharma, or rather we ensure that we are not asking for anything for ourselves, but you as a king will ask for yourself. So they get into an argument, and that argument becomes so severe that Kaushika leaves very, very unhappy. He fights with him, but he leaves with that sense of, I want to be greater than Vishwam. I want to be greater than Vasishtha. And he takes that penance upon himself, saying, let the world know me as a Brahmarishi, because Vasishtha is known as a Brahmarishi, the greatest title amongst rishis. So Kaushika says, let me also become like that. And he keeps on ascending in his spiritual merit till he finds that point where he realizes he's lost competition. So look at the contrast in the stories, right? There is one Vasishtha and Vishwamitra. Here, Kaushika, which is the king, the angry king who wants to win, he reaches that point where he realizes, I don't want to be in competition with anyone. I want to be a friend to the universe. He moves from a state of anger and hatred into universal love. Universal love is Vishwamitra. He becomes a friend to the universe. Versus Jamadagni and Kartavirya Arjuna. Kartavirya Arjuna said, if I can't have, you can't have, to hell with you. That's what it is. So, two stories starting at the same point saying, what can your desire do to you? Your desire can either make you burn with envy to the point that you will lose all rational thinking and do something you shouldn't have, or it can lead you to a point where you realize, I don't need this desire. I've gone past this desire. Two beautiful ways of looking at the same thing. Two journeys that can happen within us. So these reflective stories, these connections make us think, oh wow, they're trying to tell you much more than a story. They're trying to tell you about what's happening inside us all the time. So possibilities galore.
What's said about Parshuram's story arc at the end of his killing spree?
What's said about Parshurama is that he continues to learn from Dattatreya Swami. And when his father is beheaded, his mother, Renuka, tells him, take his head to a specific place. Keep roaming with his head. Where she gives him a series of interesting happenings. There are variations within the story, so I'll not go into the details too much. But she tells him, where you see certain extraordinary happenings, perform the Antima Samskaras there. Perform the last rites over there. Know that place is where you will find divine grace. So the place that he chooses, which is in the Western Ghats or the Sahyadri Parvatas, the place that he chooses is exactly where Dattatreya appears to him. So that is how the Avatar's journey, I will not say culminates, but the story culminates there, saying he continues to learn from Dattatreya then on and goes within. and then moves to the Himalayas. So
What do you think is the meaning of he is still accessible?
you tap into the power of Parshurama.
Quicker than another deity.
Depends on what that other deity is. So, like I said, so the category of devatas that bless you immediately are called as Kshipra Prasada. Kshipra is immediate. Prasada is blessing. Kshipra Prasada, they have the quality of that. Kshipra Prasada Lakshana. All the deities that have animal heads and human bodies are all Kshipra Prasada. Hanuman, Ganapati, Narasimha, Varaha. All of these are predominantly like that. You reach out, they can come like this. Parshurama is considered a Kshipra Prasada as well, though he is an exception to this rule. What I mean by this is, Parshurama is a Raksha Swarupam. So, when you are in danger, Parshurama will come. Because Parshurama's, look, anytime you want to understand what can this avatara do for me as a sadhaka, how can this avatara support me? When you ask it from a non-selfish point of view, look at what the story is telling you about that avatara. You'll understand. When things are dropping for you and you're feeling like everything is going to, all my effort up till this point is gone, it's baseless, Kurma avatara will help you. He'll give you a base and say, no, don't worry. What that means in terms of your sadhana is your Mooladhara will get strengthened if you do Kurma Upasana. So Kurma is also the force that keeps the earth on its axis. So if you go to temples, especially in the south, you'll see this. You'll see Kurma drawn out or carved out. On top of Kurma, there will be the world. Or rather, on top of Kurma, there will be Adisesha. On Adisesha's hoods is where the earth is supported. Idea is, in your own body, that this massive universe is being replicated here. This is the microcosmos. Same thing. You just look at what is happening in that story. You'll find a way to tap into it saying, oh, this is what this avatara will do for me. So Parshurama will give you the strength to power through difficult situations. When you have Shatru Badha, when you are finding yourself struggling with enemies, with people that do not have your best interests at heart, Parshurama will support you. When you get into that space of sadhana. So, and that leads us to the idea that there are certain Purna avatars that encapsulate all of these. Now, for example, I may just be a devotee of Vishnu. In a moment of crisis, my intellectual mind will not come into being saying, okay, right now, this is the kind of crisis that I'm going through. So therefore, this is the Devata I will reach. I will just think, God, please help me. But that's when I trust that wisdom saying that wisdom will decide what form it has to take and come. I don't have to say, everything that I'm doing is collapsing. So please come as Kurma. Everything that I'm doing is collapsing. Please come. He will decide what form he needs to come and take. So this is where the fluidity of the forms also begins. And that is why there is this very beautiful story. Again, I'm jumping to show how the Dashavataras find mention in such beautiful and unexpected of places. This comes to us in the Brahmanda Purana. Here, the goddess Shakti, who is manifest as Lalita. Lalita is waging a war against this Rakshasa called Bhandasura. Bhandasura is such a powerful Rakshasa that he releases 10 types of Asuras onto Devi's army. So, looking at each Asura that he sends one Asura to hide all the knowledge that they know. So, these Asuras are not physical Rakshasas. These are forces that go into their mind and make them forget everything that they have learnt. Immediately she responds by picking up her hand, and from her first finger comes out Matsya. Matsya goes and retrieves everything that was lost in the heads of her Sena. Next, he sends a Rakshasa that causes all of them to lose confidence and feel like their work up till now is useless. So everything is sinking. She sends Kurma Avatara. Each of the Rakshasas that he sends, she sends a counter Avataram to, which is described in one word as Karanguli Nakhotpanna. From the tip of her nails, Kara Anguli Nakha Utpanna Narayana Dashakritihi. Narayana's 10 avatars came from here. So for Shakti Upasaka, if you just worship her hands, Narayana's 10 avatars will protect you. One thing will lead you into another.
Jai Mata Di.
Exactly. Just because she's his sister. So of course people get into like endless loops about so which came first then.
Or which one's greater.
Which one's greater?
But that's Maya at play.
That's Maya at play. You hold on to what speaks to you. You don't, in the space of sadhana, you will not care about what's greater. it is, sure, it's definitely intellectually stimulating and to understand that, and that has its place. But in the realm of sadhana, that will disappear. In the realm of sadhana, when I see her hands, I will remember Dashavataras. As a sadhaka, that's all I need to know. So that then leads to the idea of any kind of negativity that is present. Divinity has the ability to counter that immediately. And that is exactly Ramavataram. Again, Rama and Krishna Avataram, we open them, they're like massive chapters in themselves.
And this episode is pretty hypnotic already.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, we can just do a namaskaram to them from afar because they are, when they come, they will demand full center stage. So,
there's also part of me that originally thought we'll finish all 10 in this episode. And as we move forward, and this is the first time meeting you in life and podcasting with you, I've realized that, it's just a universe of Vishnu episode. And it's a great way to understand Vishnu beyond the Ram and Krishna angles that people understand him with.
Absolutely. Those are great. I mean, they're Purna Swarupams. Outside of them too, a world is waiting to be discovered. Just through sadhana. The Dashavataras that we talk about find their parallels in the Dashamahavidyas. Each aspect can be traced. For example, without going too much into Ramavataram, Rama is considered as Rama's name is called Taraka Nama. Taraka means that which helps us cross over. Like I said, every avataram corresponds to one Mahavidya. Rama is called Taraka Nama, so he corresponds to Tara Vidya because she also takes you across. Narasimha, again, the hint of blood corresponds to Chinnamasta. So you will find beautiful connections like this that say they're just giving you that hint, and in sadhana you will find them yourselves. So this is what a lot of people say, that how does one read more about this? But in sadhana, these things will open themselves up. For example, for the longest time I could never understand why Vamana is compared in Dashamahavidya to Lalita Tripura Sundari. Lalita Tripura Sundari is the goddess that holds a sugar cane. She is considered the most beautiful form across the three worlds. Tripura Sundari. What is the connection between her and Vamana, I thought? But then I pieced it together and realized Vamana becomes Trivikrama, 3. The one that is pervading across all the three states of time, 3 bodies, 3 states of awareness. Jagrat, Swapna, Sushupti. Jagrat is awake, Swapna is dream, Sushupti is dreamlessness. All the 3. So, one thing. Rama is, especially in other literature, we see Rama is not always compared to Tara, he is compared to Tripura Sundari. They both hold a bow. So, we make the correlations also based on their physical appearance. Krishna is considered to be Kali. And there's a very beautiful story. This is, like I said, I feel like Rama and Krishna will deserve center stage. So I'll just do a namaskaram with one story each. There's a beautiful story which we find, I think, in the Brahma Vaivarta Purana, and I stand corrected if my sourcing is not from there, but I've read it and it touched me. So I honestly forgot the source. This is a story in which Radha's husband is told, is informed that Radha leaves every night to spend time with her lover. So he takes it upon himself, her husband, to go and catch her red-handed. So Radha has this habit of going to the Vrindavan Rasalila Bhumi, the space where the Rasalila happens. And she goes there every night and she spends the night with Krishna in great adoration of Krishna. So that particular night, Krishna knows that her husband is also following. So when Radha comes to him in this grove, he says, Radha, will you bring some flowers today for me? So she says, where from? He says, from the grove around here. She says, okay. And she goes to pluck all of these flowers. Radha goes, and that's exactly the moment her husband comes and hides in the bushes. She doesn't know it, but Krishna knows it. She's gone. He's watching keenly. He has not yet spotted Krishna. Krishna is in a place where he cannot see him. He's waiting. So there's it's like a very active serial. It's like a climatic moment. Radha comes back and her husband thinks, now I'll catch her. I'll see who has she brought these flowers for. As soon as she comes and she's brought these flowers, she offers them to Krishna. So as she's offering them, he steps out, her husband. He steps out from the bushes to catch her. When he steps out, instead of Krishna, he sees Kali over there. And he thinks to himself, Radha is not here with any lover. Radha is worshipping our Kuladevi, who is Kali. and she's doing that for the sake of the family. I was wrong to have doubted her like this, and he goes off. Meanwhile, Radha looks up and realizes that Krishna has become Kali. The place where this has happened in Vrindavan is the temple of Krishna Kali. So this is where Krishna is dressed as Kali, communicating that they are identical tattva. They're identical energies. Look at his name. Shyama Krishna is his name. Her name is Shyamala. It's the same thing. He was born in Mathura. Because his essence is very sweet, her essence is also equally sweet. So she resides in Madurai, which is in Tamil Nadu.
Wow.
Mathura becomes Madurai. That's all it is.
Damn.
It's the same thing. Krishna is born on Janmashtami. Janmashtami was followed, or the night is called as Moharatri. She is Moha Swarupam. The night Ashtami is always for her. It is a Devi Tithi. He chooses that night to be born because they're brother and sister. So identicality. In Kolkata, if you go, there is something called Krishna Kali. Here it is Kali Krishna. In Vrindavan, because Krishna is main, it is Kali Krishna. In eastern part of the country, because Kali is main, it is Krishna Kali. There Kali is dressed as Krishna. Identicality. So yes, that's all I can say about Rama and Krishna without my whole heart going off to them. So we'll pause there with these two avatarams.
I think we should end the episode also.
I think so. I think we'll dwell on the fact that there are 10 as per sequencing also. And there are 2 more. And these 2 vary. There's some versions say it is Buddha, some versions say it is Balarama. And then there is Kalki. So 9 have come, 10 have not come. The 10th one has not come. What is the reasons for sequencing them? Why did they choose 10 across different books, across different times and spaces? Why were these 10 put like this? The reason is in astrology. These 10 correspond, 9 of them correspond to one respective graha, one respective planetary force. Worshipping that form will rid you of that graha dosham. But the maths doesn't add up. No, there are navagrahas, 9 grahas, and there are 10 avatarams. The logic is this: 9 avatarams correspond to 9 different grahas. One avatara, you worship this one avatara, it is equivalent to all worshipping all the navagrahas, because this avatara can remove all the graha doshas. That is Krishna avatar. So that is the reason these 10 are placed like this. It is about navagraha dosha nivaranam, removal of doshas of all those grahas, and one which encompasses and oversees all of this, but also takes you beyond. So we will save that for a later day, but this is an entry into the world of Vishnu. It's definitely not an exit.
This episode is going to need a sequel. So Vinay Varanasi, thank you. Epic episode. That's what I'll say, man. Really had a lot of fun speaking to you.
Likewise. This has been special. The world of Vishnu has pulled us both into it. So I think we're going to remain in here for a bit.
Yeah. All I can say is I am really looking forward to the next time. Thank you, brother. Had a lot of fun with creating this with you.
Thank you.
That was the episode for today. Ladies and gentlemen, sequel episode is coming up where we focus much more on Krishna Bhagavan as well as Ramji, and perhaps even a bit of chatter on Kalki. Vinay Varanasi is definitely going to be back on TRS. We found an all-star, ladies and gentlemen. Tell me what you liked about this episode and tell me what you'd like for us to cover the next time around. All the love from Team TRS. Ranveer and the team will be back very soon.